In the vast, undulating expanse of the Eurasian steppe, where the wind whispers tales of ancient nomadic tribes and the horizon stretches endlessly, a monumental force emerged that would forever reshape the course of human history. This was the Mongol Empire, a realm born from the sheer will and strategic genius of one man, Temujin, later revered as Genghis Khan. His journey from a humble, often challenging, beginning to the undisputed leader of the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever known is a saga of resilience, ambition, and an unparalleled understanding of both human nature and the unforgiving landscape he called home. Imagine, if you will, the crisp, biting air of the Mongolian plateau, a place where survival itself was a daily triumph. Here, life was dictated by the rhythms of nature, the migration of herds, and the constant vigilance against rival clans. It was a world of stark beauty and brutal realities, where strength, cunning, and loyalty were not merely virtues but necessities for existence. In this crucible of hardship, Temujin forged a vision that transcended the traditional tribal skirmishes. He envisioned a unified people, a single nation bound by a common purpose, capable of achieving feats previously deemed impossible. His early life was marked by adversity, a common thread among many who would rise to greatness. Orphaned and outcast, he experienced firsthand the treachery and hardship that characterized the fragmented tribal society. These experiences, however, did not break him. Instead, they honed his resolve and instilled in him a deep understanding of the need for unity and discipline. He learned to navigate the complex web of alliances and betrayals, to inspire loyalty in his followers, and to command respect even from his adversaries. His charisma was not that of a flamboyant orator, but of a quiet, determined leader who led by example, sharing the burdens and dangers of his people. The rise of Genghis Khan was not merely a military conquest, it was a social and political revolution. He dismantled the old tribal structures, replacing them with a meritocratic system that rewarded skill and loyalty above lineage. This radical approach fostered an unprecedented sense of cohesion and purpose among the Mongol warriors, transforming them from disparate nomadic groups into an unstoppable military machine. His legal code, the Yasa, provided a framework for a stable and orderly society, emphasizing justice, discipline, and the protection of the vulnerable. It was a testament to his foresight, recognizing that true power lay not just in military might, but in the establishment of a just and equitable system. As the Mongol Empire expanded, it brought with it not only conquest, but also a profound transformation of the global landscape. The Pax Mongolica, a period of relative peace and stability enforced across vast territories, facilitated the unprecedented exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies between East and West. The Silk Road, once a perilous route fraught with danger, became a vibrant artery of commerce, connecting distant civilizations and fostering a cross-cultural dialogue that would leave an indelible mark on the world. This era witnessed the flow of knowledge, from advancements in astronomy and mathematics to the spread of new agricultural techniques and medical practices. It was a period of intense cultural diffusion, where the diverse traditions of conquered peoples mingled and influenced one another, creating a rich tapestry of human experience. Yet the story of the Mongol Empire is also one of immense human cost. The conquests were often brutal, marked by widespread destruction and loss of life. The nomadic lifestyle, while enabling rapid military expansion, also meant a disregard for settled agricultural societies, leading to famine and displacement. The sheer scale of their military campaigns left a lasting impact on the demographics and political structures of the regions they conquered. Understanding this complex legacy requires a nuanced perspective, acknowledging both the destructive force of their military might and the transformative impact of their administrative and cultural policies. In the quiet moments of reflection, as we delve deeper into the annals of this remarkable empire, we will explore the daily lives of its people, from the fierce warriors who rode across the steppes to the artisans and scholars who contributed to its cultural flourishing. We will examine the intricate social structures that governed their lives, the spiritual beliefs that guided their actions, and the enduring traditions that continue to resonate in the modern world. This journey through the Mongol Empire is an invitation to contemplate the enduring power of human ambition, the complexities of historical change, and the subtle ways in which the past continues to shape our present. Let us embark on this exploration with a calm and open mind, allowing the whispers of history to guide us through the vast and fascinating world of the Mongols. To truly understand the Mongol Empire, one must first delve into the extraordinary life of its founder, Temujin, who would later be known as Genghis Khan. Born around 1162 in the rugged lands near the Onan River, his early life was far from the privileged existence one might associate with a future emperor. Instead, it was a crucible of hardship, betrayal, and relentless struggle for survival. His father, Yasuge Bagatur, a respected chieftain of the Borjigin clan, was poisoned by a rival tribe when Temujin was just 9 years old. This sudden and tragic event plunged his family into destitution and vulnerability. The clan, fearing the burden of a widow and her young children, abandoned them, leaving them to fend for themselves in the harsh steppe environment. This period of abandonment was pivotal. Temujin, his mother Hoylun, and his siblings were forced to live a life of extreme poverty, surviving on roots, wild fruits, and whatever small game they could hunt. This experience instilled in him a profound understanding of the fragility of life and the importance of self-reliance. He learned to hunt, fish, and endure the brutal winters, developing a resilience that would serve him well in his later conquests. More importantly, he witnessed firsthand the devastating consequences of tribal disunity and the ruthless nature of the steppe politics. These early lessons would shape his vision for a unified Mongol nation, free from the constant threat of internal strife and external aggression. As he grew older, Temujin began to assert himself. He faced numerous challenges, including being captured and enslaved by a rival clan, the Taichud, who had once been allies of his father. His daring escape, aided by a sympathetic guard, further cemented his reputation for courage and resourcefulness. These trials, rather than breaking his spirit, hardened his resolve and sharpened his strategic mind. He understood that to survive and thrive in such a volatile world, one needed not only strength but also the ability to forge strong alliances and inspire unwavering loyalty. His first significant alliance was with Jamaka, a childhood friend and blood brother, Anda. This bond, initially strong, would later dissolve into rivalry, highlighting the complex and often treacherous nature of steppe politics. However, it was through these early alliances and his growing reputation as a skilled warrior and charismatic leader that Temujin began to attract followers. This affected members of other tribes, drawn by his vision of unity and his promise of a better future, flocked to his banner. He offered them not just a leader, but a sense of belonging and purpose, a stark contrast to the fragmented and often chaotic tribal system. By 1206, after years of relentless campaigning, strategic alliances, and decisive victories against rival tribes, Temujin had achieved the seemingly impossible. He had united all the nomadic tribes of the Mongolian plateau under a single banner. At a grand assembly at Kurultai, he was proclaimed Genghis Khan, meaning the military machine forged by Genghis Khan was unlike anything the world had ever seen. It was not merely a collection of warriors, but a highly disciplined, adaptable, and ruthlessly efficient fighting force that revolutionized warfare. At its core, the Mongol army's success lay in its innovative organizational structure, its mastery of cavalry tactics, and its psychological warfare. These elements, combined with the unwavering loyalty inspired by Genghis Khan, made them virtually unstoppable. The decimal system, a foundation of discipline. Genghis Khan abolished the traditional tribal military structures, which were often prone to internal feuds and disunity. In their place, he implemented a decimal system of organization, a stroke of genius that fostered cohesion and loyalty to the central command rather than to individual clan leaders. The army was divided into units of 10 Arban, 100 Yagan, 1,000 Mingan, and 10,000 Tumen. Each unit was led by an officer chosen for his merit and loyalty, not his lineage. This system ensured that every soldier, regardless of his tribal origin, was integrated into a larger, unified force. It also allowed for rapid deployment and communication, as orders could be relayed efficiently through the chain of command. This decimal organization was not just for battle, it extended to all aspects of Mongol life. When not campaigning, these units often functioned as administrative and economic collectives, further solidifying the bonds between soldiers and their leaders. This holistic approach to military and social organization contributed significantly to the Mongols' sustained success. Mastery of cavalry, speed, mobility, and deception. The Mongols were masters of mounted warfare, and their cavalry was the backbone of their army. Every Mongol warrior was a skilled horseman from childhood, capable of riding for days with minimal rest. They typically rode small, hardy ponies, which were incredibly resilient and could endure long marches across diverse terrains. Each warrior usually had multiple horses, allowing them to switch mounts frequently and maintain a high pace without exhausting any single animal. This logistical advantage gave them unparalleled speed and mobility, enabling them to cover vast distances rapidly and surprise their enemies. Their tactics were characterized by speed, deception, and overwhelming force. They rarely engaged in direct hit-on assaults, preferring instead to use feigned retreats, flanking maneuvers, and encirclement tactics. The feigned retreat was a particularly effective and demoralizing tactic. Mongol cavalry would charge, fire a volley of arrows, and then suddenly turn and flee, luring their unsuspecting enemies into a disorganized pursuit. Once the enemy was strung out and vulnerable, the Mongols would swiftly turn back, often joined by hidden reserves, and unleash a devastating attack. This tactic required immense discipline and coordination, as well as superior horsemanship, which the Mongols possessed in abundance. The primary weapon of the Mongol warrior was the composite bow, a marvel of ancient engineering. Made from layers of horn, wood, and sinew, it was incredibly powerful, capable of piercing armor at long distances. Mongol archers could fire accurately while riding at a full gallop, a skill that few other armies could match. They carried multiple quivers of arrows, each designed for different purposes. Light arrows for long-range harassment, heavier armor-piercing arrows for close combat. The sheer volume of arrows unleashed by a Mongol charge could decimate enemy ranks before they even had a chance to engage in hand-to-hand combat. In addition to the bow, Mongol warriors were also proficient with lances, sabers, and lassos. The lasso, often overlooked, was a surprisingly effective weapon for dismounting enemy riders or capturing prisoners. Their versatility in weaponry and their ability to seamlessly transition between ranged and melee combat made them formidable opponents on any battlefield. Beyond their battlefield prowess, the Mongols excelled in logistics and intelligence gathering. Their vast network of horse relays, YAM, allowed for rapid communication and movement of troops and supplies across their empire. This sophisticated postal system was crucial for maintaining control over conquered territories and coordinating military campaigns. They also employed a highly effective intelligence network, gathering detailed information about their enemy's strengths, weaknesses, and movements before launching an attack. This meticulous planning and preparation often gave them a decisive advantage, allowing them to exploit vulnerabilities and achieve victory with minimal losses. Furthermore, the Mongols were quick to adopt and integrate new technologies and tactics from the peoples they conquered. They learned siege warfare from the Chinese, employing engineers and siege engines to breach fortified cities. They incorporated gunpowder weapons and advanced metallurgical techniques, constantly refining their military capabilities. This adaptability and willingness to learn from others were key factors in their sustained military dominance. In essence, the Mongol military was a finely tuned instrument of conquest built on a foundation of discipline, mobility, and innovation. Their campaigns were not random acts of violence, but meticulously planned operations executed with precision and overwhelming force. The psychological impact of their relentless advance, combined with their reputation for ruthlessness, often broke the will of their enemies before a single arrow was fired. This combination of strategic brilliance, tactical superiority, and psychological warfare cemented their place as one of the most formidable military forces in history, the universal ruler. This moment marked the birth of the Mongol Empire, a new era defined by unity, ambition, and an insatiable drive for expansion. Genghis Khan's leadership was characterized by a blend of pragmatism and vision. He understood the importance of rewarding loyalty and merit, promoting individuals based on their abilities rather than their birthright. This policy attracted talented individuals from all walks of life, including those from conquered territories who were eager to serve a leader who recognized their potential. He also implemented a strict legal code, the Yasa, which governed all aspects of Mongol life, from military discipline to civil conduct. The Yasa emphasized justice, honesty, and respect for the law, creating a stable and orderly society that fostered trust and cooperation among its diverse population. His military campaigns were not merely acts of conquest, but strategic endeavors aimed at securing resources, eliminating threats, and expanding the reach of his empire. He was a master of psychological warfare, often offering his enemies the chance to surrender peacefully, promising protection and integration into the Mongol system. However, those who resisted faced the full might of his formidable army, a force that was as disciplined as it was ruthless. The tales of Mongol ferocity spread far and wide, often preceding their arrival and instilling fear in the hearts of their adversaries. This reputation, while terrifying, also served as a powerful tool of intimidation, often leading to swift surrenders and minimizing the need for prolonged sieges. Genghis Khan's legacy extends far beyond his military achievements. He laid the groundwork for a vast and enduring empire that for a time connected East and West, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies. He established a sophisticated postal system, the YAM, which allowed for rapid communication and intelligence gathering across his vast domains. He encouraged trade and commerce, recognizing their importance for the prosperity of his empire. He also fostered religious tolerance, allowing conquered peoples to practice their own faiths, a policy that contributed to the stability and longevity of his rule. His death in 1227 marked a turning point in the history of the Mongol Empire. While his successors continued his expansionist policies, the empire eventually fractured into several independent khanates. However, the foundations he laid, the military innovations he introduced, and the administrative systems he established continued to influence the regions they controlled for centuries. Genghis Khan remains a towering figure in world history, a complex and controversial leader whose actions shaped the destinies of countless people and left an indelible mark on the global landscape. His story is a testament to the power of vision, leadership, and the enduring human capacity for both creation and destruction. Life in the Mongol Empire, particularly for the vast majority of its people who remained nomadic, was dictated by the harsh realities and subtle beauties of the steppe. It was a life of constant movement, deep connection to nature, and a profound sense of community. Far from the settled agricultural societies of the East and West, the Mongols had developed a unique way of life perfectly adapted to their environment, a testament to their ingenuity and resilience. At the heart of Mongol nomadic life was the yurt, a circular portable dwelling that could be easily dismantled, transported, and reassembled. This ingenious structure was perfectly suited to their migratory lifestyle, allowing them to follow their herds across the vast grasslands. The gyr was typically made of a wooden lattice frame covered with layers of felt and canvas, providing excellent insulation against the extreme temperatures of the steppe, scorching summers and brutally cold winters. A central opening at the top allowed smoke from the stove to escape and provided light, while a sturdy door always faced south, a traditional orientation. Inside, the gyr was a microcosm of Mongol society. The layout was highly symbolic and functional. The northern side, opposite the door, was considered the place of honor, reserved for elders, honored guests, and religious artifacts. The western side was typically for men, their saddles and hunting equipment, while the eastern side was for women, their cooking utensils, and children. The center was dominated by a stove, the heart of the home, providing warmth and a place for cooking. Despite its seemingly simple construction, the gyr was a remarkably comfortable and efficient living space embodying the Mongol spirit of practicality and adaptability. The Mongol diet was primarily based on the products of their livestock, meat, milk, and dairy products. Horses, sheep, goats, and yaks were not just a source of transportation and raw materials, but also provided the essential sustenance for survival. Meat, often dried or smoked to preserve it for long periods, was a staple, especially during the harsh winters. Mutton was particularly common, but horse meat was also consumed, especially during celebrations. Milk, particularly mare's milk, was central to their diet. It was consumed fresh, but more importantly, was fermented to produce arag kumis, a mildly alcoholic and highly nutritious beverage. Arag was not just a drink, it was a cultural cornerstone, a symbol of hospitality and communal bonding. Other dairy products included dried curds, arul, cheese, and butter, all designed for portability and long-term storage, crucial for their nomadic lifestyle. Vegetables and grains were less common in their diet, primarily due to the limitations of the steppe environment. However, they would supplement their diet with wild herbs, berries, and roots whenever available. Hunting also played a significant role, providing fresh meat and furs. The Mongols were skilled hunters, often organizing large-scale hunts, nurj, that served not only as a means of acquiring food but also as military training exercises. Owning their coordination and tactical skills, Mongol clothing was designed for practicality, durability, and protection against the elements. The traditional garment was the deel, a loose-fitting, long coat made from wool, felt, or animal skins, often lined with fur for warmth. The deel was versatile, serving as both clothing and a blanket, and its design allowed for ease of movement essential for riding and daily tasks. It was typically belted at the waist, and the long sleeves could be rolled up or down depending on the weather. Underneath the deel, both men and women wore trousers and boots. Mongol boots were sturdy, made from leather or felt, and designed to withstand the rigors of riding and walking across rough terrain. Headwear was also important, with various types of hats providing protection from the sun, wind, and cold. Materials used for clothing were primarily derived from their livestock, reflecting their self-sufficiency and deep connection to their animals. The nomadic lifestyle of the Mongols revolved around the seasonal migration of their herds. They moved their jurs and livestock several times a year, seeking fresh pastures and water sources. This constant movement was not random, but followed established routes and patterns passed down through generations. The timing of these migrations was crucial, dependent on the weather, the availability of grazing land, and the health of their animals. This intimate understanding of their environment and their animals was fundamental to their survival. During migrations, the jurs were dismantled and loaded onto carts pulled by oxen or camels, while the livestock were driven by skilled herdsmen. The entire community participated in these movements, from the youngest children to the oldest elders. It was a collective effort, reinforcing the strong communal bonds that characterized Mongol society. The journey itself was often challenging, but it was also a time of anticipation as they moved towards new pastures and the promise of renewed sustenance, social structure, and family life. Mongol society was organized around the family, clan, and tribe with strong patriarchal traditions. The family unit was the cornerstone, and loyalty to one's family and clan was paramount. Marriages were often arranged, serving to forge alliances between families and tribes. Women played a vital role in Mongol society, managing the household, raising children, and often participating in herding and other economic activities. They held a relatively high status compared to women in many other contemporary societies, enjoying considerable autonomy and influence within the family and community. Children were raised to be self-reliant and skilled in horsemanship and archery from a young age. They learned by observing and participating in daily tasks, developing the practical skills necessary for survival on the steppe. Elders were highly respected, their wisdom and experience valued for guiding the community through challenges and preserving traditional knowledge. Despite the harshness of their environment, Mongol life was not without its moments of joy and celebration. Festivals, wrestling matches, horse races, and archery contests were common, providing opportunities for communal gathering, entertainment, and the display of martial prowess. These events reinforced social bonds and celebrated their unique cultural identity. In essence, daily life in the Mongol Empire was a testament to human adaptability and the enduring power of a nomadic culture. It was a life lived in harmony with nature, characterized by resilience, resourcefulness, and a deep sense of community. The rhythms of the steppe shaped their existence, fostering a people who were both fierce warriors and pragmatic survivors, forever connected to the vast lands they called home. Beyond the thunder of hooves and the clash of swords, the Mongol Empire left an enduring legacy that transcended military conquest, the Pax Mongolica. This period, roughly spanning the 13th and 14th centuries, was characterized by a remarkable degree of peace and stability across the vast territories under Mongol control. While born from conquest, this enforced peace inadvertently fostered an unprecedented era of cultural exchange, economic prosperity, and intellectual diffusion that profoundly reshaped the global landscape. The reinvigoration of the Silk Road, perhaps the most significant impact of the Pax Mongolica, was the revitalization and secure operation of the Silk Road. For centuries, this ancient network of trade routes had been a vital artery connecting east and west, but it was often fraught with peril. Bandits, warring factions, and political instability made travel dangerous and unreliable. The Mongols, with their centralized authority and strict enforcement of law and order, eliminated these threats. They established a vast system of garrisons and postal stations, YAM, along the routes, ensuring the safety of merchants and travelers. This security, coupled with a standardized system of weights and measures and a common currency, dramatically reduced the risks and costs associated with long-distance trade. As a result, the flow of goods, ideas, and technologies between Europe, Asia, and the Middle East reached unprecedented levels. Chinese silks, porcelain, and gunpowder flowed westward, while European textiles, glass, and metalwork found new markets in the east. Spices from India, precious stones from Central Asia, and furs from Siberia all traversed the Silk Road, enriching both merchants and consumers. This economic boom stimulated innovation and production across the empire, leading to a period of remarkable prosperity in many regions. The Pax Mongolica was not just about the exchange of material goods, it was also a conduit for the transmission of knowledge, art, and culture. Scholars, artists, and craftsmen traveled freely across the empire, sharing their expertise and influencing local traditions. Chinese printing techniques, papermaking, and gunpowder technology spread westward, profoundly impacting European development. Astronomical and mathematical knowledge from the Islamic world found its way to China, while Chinese medical practices and herbal remedies were introduced to the West. Religious tolerance, a hallmark of Mongol rule, also played a crucial role in this cultural exchange. The Mongols, while often adhering to their traditional shamanistic beliefs, generally allowed conquered peoples to practice their own religions. This policy attracted missionaries, scholars, and religious leaders from various faiths, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, who traveled freely, establishing communities and exchanging ideas. This open intellectual environment fostered a vibrant cross-cultural dialogue, leading to new syntheses of thought and artistic expression. The efficiency of the Pax Mongolica was underpinned by the sophisticated YAM system, a vast network of postal stations and relay riders. This system, inherited and greatly expanded by the Mongols, allowed for rapid communication and intelligence gathering across their immense empire. Messages could travel hundreds of miles a day, enabling the Great Khan to maintain tight control over his vast domains and respond swiftly to any challenges. This logistical marvel was not only vital for military command and administration, but also facilitated the movement of merchants, envoys, and travelers, further contributing to the interconnectedness of the empire. The Pax Mongolica, though relatively short-lived in historical terms, left an indelible mark on world history. It facilitated the flow of goods and ideas that laid the groundwork for the Renaissance in Europe, introducing new technologies and concepts that spurred innovation. It fostered a greater understanding of distant cultures, breaking down barriers and promoting a more interconnected world. While the Mongol conquests were undeniably brutal, the subsequent period of peace and stability they imposed created an environment conducive to unprecedented global interaction. However, it is also important to acknowledge the complexities of this legacy. The Pax Mongolica was an enforced peace, maintained through military might and the threat of severe punishment. It did not erase the suffering caused by the initial conquests, nor did it prevent internal conflicts and eventual fragmentation of the empire. Yet, its role in accelerating global interconnectedness and facilitating the exchange of knowledge cannot be overstated. It stands as a powerful testament to the paradoxical nature of history, where destruction can sometimes pave the way for unexpected periods of growth and cross-cultural flourishing. The echoes of the Pax Mongolica continue to resonate, reminding us of the intricate web of connections that bind humanity across time and space. The sheer scale of the Mongol Empire presented an unprecedented challenge in governance. How does one administer a territory that stretches across continents, encompassing diverse cultures, languages, and traditions? The Mongols, despite their nomadic origins, developed a sophisticated and surprisingly effective administrative system that allowed them to maintain control, extract resources, and facilitate the flow of information across their vast domains. This system, while evolving over time, was characterized by a blend of centralized authority, pragmatic adaptation, and a degree of local autonomy. Centralized authority in the Great Khan. At the apex of the Mongol administrative structure was the Great Khan, the supreme ruler whose authority was absolute. Genghis Khan established the precedent of a strong central leadership, and his successors, particularly Ogedei Khan and Kublai Khan, continued to refine and expand the imperial administration. Decisions regarding military campaigns, foreign policy, and major legal matters emanated from the Great Khan's court, often located in the capital cities of Karakoram and later Khanbalik, modern-day Beijing. However, direct rule over such a vast and diverse empire was impractical. The empire was therefore divided into several ulus, or appanages, which were essentially semi-autonomous khanates ruled by the descendants of Genghis Khan. These included the Golden Horde in the west, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, the Ilkhanate in Persia, and the Yuan dynasty in China. While these khanates eventually became independent entities, in the early stages of the empire, they maintained a degree of loyalty and paid tribute to the Great Khan, acknowledging his supreme authority. A cornerstone of Mongol governance was the Yasa, Genghis Khan's comprehensive legal code. This unwritten and later partially written set of laws and decrees provided a uniform legal framework across the empire, transcending local customs and traditions. The Yasa emphasized discipline, loyalty, and justice, with severe penalties for crimes such as theft, adultery, and desertion. It also regulated aspects of daily life, from hunting practices to military organization, and promoted religious tolerance. The Yasa was instrumental in maintaining order and cohesion within the diverse empire. It provided a common set of rules that all subjects, regardless of their ethnic or religious background, were expected to adhere to. This legal uniformity facilitated trade, ensured the safety of travelers, and reduced internal conflicts, contributing significantly to the stability of the Pax Mongolica. While the Great Khan and the Yasa provided centralized control, the Mongols were pragmatic rulers who understood the importance of adapting to local conditions. In conquered territories, they often retained existing administrative structures and utilized local officials, particularly in settled agricultural societies like China and Persia. This policy of indirect rule minimized resistance and allowed the Mongols to leverage the expertise of experienced administrators. In China, for example, Kublai Khan established the Yuan dynasty, adopting many Chinese administrative practices while maintaining a distinct Mongol identity. He employed Chinese scholars and bureaucrats, reformed the tax system, and invested in infrastructure projects such as canals and roads. Similarly, in Persia, the Ilkhans adopted Persian administrative methods and even converted to Islam, demonstrating a willingness to integrate with the local culture while still asserting Mongol authority. Taxation and resource extraction. To sustain their vast empire and military, the Mongols implemented efficient systems of taxation and resource extraction. In nomadic areas, taxes were often levied in livestock, while in settled regions, they collected agricultural produce, silk, and other goods. They also imposed customs duties on trade, benefiting significantly from the increased commercial activity along the Silk Road. The collected resources were used to support the imperial court, fund military campaigns, and maintain the extensive postal system. While the initial conquests were often accompanied by plunder, the Mongols quickly realized the importance of establishing a stable economic base. They encouraged agricultural production, repaired irrigation systems, and promoted trade, understanding that a prosperous empire was a strong empire. However, the burden of taxation could be heavy, and local populations sometimes suffered under the demands of their Mongol overlords. As mentioned earlier, the YAM system was not just a postal service, but a critical administrative tool. It allowed for the rapid transmission of orders, intelligence, and tribute across the empire. Messengers riding fresh horses at relay stations could cover vast distances in a short amount of time, ensuring that the Great Khan was well informed and able to exercise his authority effectively. This sophisticated communication network was essential for maintaining control over distant provinces and coordinating military movements. The administrative innovations of the Mongol Empire had a lasting impact on the regions they controlled. Their emphasis on centralized authority, a universal legal code, and efficient communication systems influenced subsequent empires and states. The Pax Mongolica, a direct result of their effective governance, fostered an era of unprecedented global interaction that laid the groundwork for future developments in trade, technology, and culture. While their methods were often ruthless, the Mongols demonstrated a remarkable capacity for pragmatic governance. They understood that conquest alone was not enough. To build a lasting empire, one needed to establish order, facilitate commerce, and adapt to the diverse needs of their subjects. The story of Mongol administration is a testament to their ability to transform from nomadic warriors into effective rulers, leaving behind a complex and multifaceted legacy that continues to fascinate historians and scholars alike. Beyond the military might and administrative prowess, the Mongol Empire was a vibrant tapestry of diverse cultures, beliefs, and social structures. While the Mongols themselves maintained their distinct nomadic traditions, their vast empire encompassed a multitude of peoples, each contributing to the rich cultural mosaic. Understanding the social fabric of the Mongol Empire requires delving into their indigenous beliefs, their interactions with conquered religions, and the hierarchical organization that governed their society. Shamanism, the ancient roots of Mongol belief. At the core of traditional Mongol spirituality was shamanism, an animistic belief system deeply intertwined with their nomadic lifestyle and reverence for nature. Shamans, often revered figures, acted as intermediaries between the human and spirit worlds, performing rituals, divining the future, and healing the sick. The Mongols believed in a celestial supreme being, Tengri, the eternal blue sky, who was the source of all power and authority. The land, mountains, rivers, and animals were also imbued with spirits, and respect for these natural forces was paramount. This indigenous belief system emphasized a harmonious relationship with nature, a deep respect for ancestors, and a cyclical view of time. Sacrifices, often of animals, were made to appease spirits and ensure good fortune. The practice of reading omens from the natural world, such as the flight of birds or the patterns of clouds, was also common. Shamanism provided a spiritual framework that guided their daily lives, their military campaigns, and their understanding of the cosmos. One of the most striking features of Mongol rule was their remarkable policy of religious tolerance. Unlike many empires of their time, the Mongols generally did not impose their own beliefs on conquered peoples. Instead, they allowed diverse religions to flourish within their domains, including Buddhism, Christianity, Nestorian and Catholic, Islam, and Judaism. This policy was not necessarily born out of altruism, but rather a pragmatic understanding that religious persecution could lead to unrest and rebellion, undermining the stability of their vast empire. This tolerance attracted religious leaders and scholars from various faiths to the Mongol courts, leading to fascinating interfaith dialogues and exchanges of ideas. Missionaries traveled freely across the empire, spreading their doctrines and establishing new communities. This open environment contributed significantly to the cultural and intellectual vibrancy of the Pax Mongolica, fostering a unique blend of religious traditions and philosophical thought. Mongol society, while seemingly egalitarian among its warriors, was structured around a clear hierarchy. At the very top was the Great Khan, whose authority was divinely sanctioned by Tengri. Below him were the members of the Golden family, the direct descendants of Genghis Khan, who formed the ruling elite and governed the various khanate. The Mongol aristocracy, composed of powerful tribal leaders and military commanders, held significant influence. Below them were the ordinary Mongol warriors and herdsmen, who formed the backbone of the army and the economy. Their status was elevated compared to the conquered peoples, reflecting their role as the ruling class. Conquered populations occupied the lower strata of society. Their status varied depending on their usefulness to the empire. Skilled artisans, engineers, and scholars were often highly valued and relocated to Mongol centers where their expertise could be utilized. Farmers and laborers were generally allowed to continue their traditional livelihoods, albeit under the burden of taxation and tribute. Slaves, acquired through conquest, formed the lowest rung of the social ladder. Women in Mongol society enjoyed a relatively high status compared to many other contemporary cultures. They played crucial roles in managing the household, raising children, and participating in economic activities such as herding and trade. Mongol women were often skilled horsewomen and archers, capable of defending their homes and participating in hunts. They had the right to own property, initiate divorce, and even serve as regents or advisors to their husbands and sons. Notable women, such as Genghis Khan's mother Hoylun and his daughter-in-law Sorgatani Beki, wielded significant political influence, demonstrating the potential for female leadership within the Mongol system. While their primary sphere of influence was often within the family and clan, their contributions were vital to the survival and prosperity of the empire. Given their nomadic lifestyle, Mongol art was primarily portable, focusing on practical items such as saddles, weapons, and clothing, often adorned with intricate designs. Oral traditions, particularly epic poetry and storytelling, were central to their cultural expression, preserving their history, myths, and legends. The Secret History of the Mongols, a 13th century epic poem, is a prime example of their rich oral tradition, providing invaluable insights into their origins, the life of Genghis Khan, and the early history of the empire. As the empire expanded and interacted with settled civilizations, Mongol art and culture began to absorb influences from China, Persia, and Central Asia. This fusion of styles led to unique artistic expressions, particularly in the Ilkhanate and Yuan dynasty, where Mongol patrons commissioned works that blended their nomadic aesthetic with the sophisticated artistic traditions of their conquered territories. In conclusion, the social and cultural landscape of the Mongol Empire was a complex and dynamic entity. Rooted in ancient shamanistic beliefs and nomadic traditions, it evolved through interaction with diverse conquered peoples, embracing religious tolerance and pragmatic governance. The roles of women, the hierarchical structure, and the vibrant artistic expressions all contributed to a unique civilization that, despite its military might, also fostered a rich and multifaceted human experience. The echoes of their societal norms and cultural exchanges continue to resonate, offering a deeper understanding of this remarkable historical phenomenon. The Mongol Empire, for all its vastness and power, was not destined to last forever as a unified entity. Its decline was a complex process influenced by internal strife, the sheer challenge of governing such a vast and diverse realm, and the eventual assimilation of Mongol rulers into the cultures of their conquered territories. Yet, even in its fragmentation, the empire left an indelible mark on the world, shaping political landscapes, fostering cultural exchange, and influencing the course of history for centuries to come. The seeds of the empire's fragmentation were sown shortly after the death of Genghis Khan. While he had established a clear line of succession, his vast empire was divided among his sons and grandsons into various ulas, or khanates. Initially, these khanates maintained a degree of loyalty to the Great Khan, but over time, rivalries and succession disputes intensified. The Toluid Civil War, 1264, between Kublai Khan and his brother Arik Boki for the title of Great Khan, marked a significant turning point effectively formalizing the division of the empire into independent entities. The four major Khanates that emerged, the Golden Horde in Eastern Europe and Russia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, the Ilkhanate in Persia, and the Yuan dynasty in China, increasingly pursued their own interests. While they occasionally cooperated, their political and military objectives often diverged, leading to conflicts among themselves. This internal disunity weakened the overall power of the Mongol Empire, making it more vulnerable to external pressures and internal rebellions. Assimilation and loss of Mongol identity. Another significant factor in the decline of the unified empire was the assimilation of Mongol rulers and elites into the cultures of their conquered territories. In Persia, the Ilkhans gradually adopted Islam and Persian customs, becoming patrons of Persian art and architecture. In China, Kublai Khan established the Yuan dynasty, embracing many aspects of Chinese administration and culture, though he maintained a distinct Mongol identity for his ruling class. Over generations, the distinct Mongol nomadic identity began to fade, replaced by a more localized and assimilated form of rule. This assimilation, while contributing to the stability of individual khanates, also eroded the pan-Mongol identity that had bound the empire together. The nomadic warrior ethos that had fueled their conquests gradually gave way to the more settled and bureaucratic traditions of the civilizations they governed. This shift, while perhaps inevitable given the vast cultural differences, ultimately contributed to the weakening of the central authority and the eventual dissolution of the unified empire. As the Mongol Khanates became more settled and their internal divisions deepened, they faced increasing external pressures and internal rebellions. In China, the Yuan dynasty faced growing resentment from the native Han Chinese population who viewed the Mongols as foreign occupiers. A series of natural disasters, economic hardship, and ineffective governance fueled widespread rebellions, ultimately leading to the overthrow of the Yuan dynasty by the Ming dynasty in 1368. In the West, the Golden Horde faced challenges from rising Russian principalities and internal conflicts, eventually fragmenting into smaller khanates. The Ilkhanate in Persia also succumbed to internal strife and external pressures, disintegrating into various successor states. The Chagatai Khanate, while enduring for a longer period, also faced internal divisions and external threats, eventually giving way to other regional powers. Despite its eventual fragmentation, the Mongol Empire left an extraordinary and multifaceted legacy that continues to shape the world. Its most immediate and profound impact was the unprecedented interconnectedness it fostered across Eurasia. The Pax Mongolica, though enforced, facilitated the safe passage of goods, ideas, and technologies along the Silk Road, leading to a period of intense cultural exchange and intellectual diffusion. This exchange played a crucial role in the development of both East and West, contributing to advancements in science, technology, and art. From China, technologies like gunpowder, printing, and the compass spread westward, profoundly influencing European development. From the Islamic world, advancements in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine found their way to China and Europe. This cross-cultural fertilization laid some of the groundwork for the European Renaissance and the Age of Exploration, as Europeans became more aware of the wealth and knowledge of the East. The Mongol military innovations also left a lasting impact. Their sophisticated cavalry tactics, decimal organization, and use of siege warfare influenced military strategies for centuries. The concept of a unified legal code, as embodied in the Yasa, also had a subtle but significant influence on subsequent legal systems. Furthermore, the Mongol conquest led to significant demographic and political shifts. They reshaped the political map of Eurasia, leading to the rise and fall of numerous states and empires. The destruction they wrought in some regions was immense, but in others their rule led to periods of stability and prosperity. The genetic legacy of the Mongols can still be traced across vast swaths of Asia, a testament to the scale of their migrations and conquests. In conclusion, the Mongol Empire was a phenomenon of immense historical significance. Born from the vision of a single leader, it reshaped the world through its military might, its administrative innovations, and its unparalleled facilitation of cross-cultural exchange. While its unified rule eventually faded, the echoes of its influence continue to resonate, reminding us of the complex and often paradoxical ways in which history unfolds. The story of the Mongol Empire is a testament to the enduring power of human ambition, the transformative nature of global interaction, and the intricate web of connections that bind the past to our present. While often remembered for his military prowess and ruthless conquests, Genghis Khan was also a shrewd diplomat and a visionary leader who understood that true power lay not just in force but in strategic alliances, effective governance, and a compelling vision for the future. His approach to empire building was multifaceted, combining military might with sophisticated diplomatic strategies and a pragmatic understanding of human nature. Forging alliances, the art of diplomacy on the steppe. In the fragmented tribal landscape of the Mongolian steppe, survival often depended on the ability to forge and maintain alliances. Temujin, even in his early years, demonstrated a remarkable aptitude for diplomacy. He understood the intricate web of loyalties and rivalries that characterized tribal politics and skillfully navigated this complex environment. His initial alliance with Jamuka, though ultimately short-lived, showcased his willingness to form bonds based on mutual benefit and shared goals. As he gained power, his diplomatic efforts became more sophisticated. He offered protection and integration to smaller tribes who pledged loyalty, providing them with a sense of security and belonging that was often lacking in the chaotic steppe. He also employed a strategy of divide and conquer, exploiting existing rivalries among his enemies to weaken them before launching a decisive attack. His reputation for keeping his word, both in promises and threats, made him a formidable negotiator. When he offered terms of surrender, they were often generous, allowing conquered peoples to retain their customs and religions, provided they acknowledged Mongol suzerainty and paid tribute. This pragmatic approach minimized resistance and facilitated the integration of new territories into his burgeoning empire. The Yasa, a tool for governance and unification. Genghis Khan's vision for a unified Mongol nation was not just a military one, it was also a legal and social revolution. The Yasa, his comprehensive legal code, was a testament to his foresight. It transcended the traditional tribal laws, which were often based on custom and oral tradition, and provided a written framework for a centralized and orderly society. The Yasa emphasized principles such as loyalty, discipline, honesty, and religious tolerance, creating a common set of rules that applied to all subjects, regardless of their ethnic or religious background. This legal uniformity was crucial for maintaining stability across the vast and diverse empire. It facilitated trade by providing a predictable legal environment, ensured justice by establishing clear penalties for crimes, and promoted social cohesion by fostering a sense of shared identity and purpose. The Yasa was not merely a set of punitive laws, it was a blueprint for a new social order, designed to transform disparate nomadic tribes into a unified and disciplined nation. It reflected Genghis Khan's understanding that a lasting empire required not just military might, but also a strong legal and administrative foundation. Economic vision, trade, and prosperity. While the Mongols were primarily warriors, Genghis Khan also recognized the importance of economic prosperity for the long-term stability of his empire. He actively encouraged trade, particularly along the Silk Road, which he made safe and secure for merchants. He understood that a thriving economy would generate wealth, provide resources for his army, and contribute to the overall well-being of his subjects. He implemented policies that protected merchants, reduced tariffs, and standardized weights and measures, all of which facilitated commercial activity. His economic vision extended beyond trade. He also encouraged agricultural production in settled regions, recognizing that a stable food supply was essential for supporting his growing population and army. He invested in infrastructure projects, such as roads and postal stations, which not only facilitated military movements but also promoted commerce and communication. This pragmatic approach to economics, often overlooked in accounts of his military conquests, was a crucial element of his success in building a sustainable empire. Religious tolerance, a strategic imperative. Genghis Khan's policy of religious tolerance was not merely a matter of personal belief, it was a strategic imperative. He understood that religious persecution could lead to unrest and rebellion, undermining the stability of his empire. By allowing conquered peoples to practice their own faith, he minimized resistance and fostered a sense of loyalty among his diverse subjects. This policy attracted religious leaders and scholars from various faiths to his court, leading to a vibrant exchange of ideas and a greater understanding of different cultures. This religious pluralism also served a practical purpose. It allowed the Mongols to tap into the intellectual and administrative resources of the conquered civilizations. Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, and Jewish scholars and administrators were employed in the Mongol government, contributing their expertise to the empire's development. This pragmatic approach to religious diversity was a key factor in the longevity and stability of the Mongol Empire, distinguishing it from many other empires of its time. In conclusion, Genghis Khan was far more than just a military conqueror. He was a visionary leader who understood the complex interplay of military might, diplomatic skill, legal reform, economic prosperity, and religious tolerance. His ability to forge alliances, implement a comprehensive legal code, encourage trade, and embrace religious diversity were all crucial elements of his success in building the largest contiguous land empire in history. His legacy is a testament to the power of a multifaceted approach to leadership, one that combined ruthless efficiency with pragmatic wisdom and a profound understanding of the human condition. The Mongol Empire, often perceived primarily through the lens of military conquest, played an equally transformative role in shaping global trade and fostering an unprecedented era of interconnectedness. By establishing a vast, unified dominion across Eurasia, the Mongols inadvertently became the architects of a revitalized Silk Road, turning a fragmented network of perilous routes into a secure and bustling artery of commerce. This period of intensified trade, often referred to as the Pax Mongolica, had profound and lasting effects on the economic, cultural, and technological development of both East and West, securing the routes a foundation for prosperity. Before the Mongol conquest, the various segments of the Silk Road were controlled by numerous local rulers, each imposing their own taxes, tolls, and regulations. Bandits and warring factions made travel dangerous, and merchants faced constant threats to their lives and goods. The Mongols, through their ruthless efficiency, swept away these obstacles. By conquering vast territories and establishing a centralized authority, they created a single unified political entity that spanned from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean. This unprecedented political unity allowed for the enforcement of law and order across immense distances. Genghis Khan and his successors understood that a stable and prosperous empire required a thriving economy. They actively promoted trade by ensuring the safety of merchants and travelers. Garrisons were established along the main routes, providing protection against bandits. The sophisticated Yam system, with its network of postal stations and relay riders, was also utilized by merchants, allowing for faster and more secure transportation of goods and information. This newfound security dramatically reduced the risks and costs associated with long-distance trade, encouraging a surge in commercial activity, standardization, and facilitation of commerce. Beyond security, the Mongols implemented policies that actively facilitated commerce. They introduced a standardized system of weights and measures, simplifying transactions across diverse regions. They also issued a common currency, often paper money, in the Yuan dynasty, which further streamlined trade. While taxes and tolls were still levied, they were generally consistent and predictable, unlike the arbitrary and often extortionate demands of pre-Mongol local rulers. This predictability and transparency made it easier for merchants to plan their journeys and calculate their profits, further incentivizing trade. Furthermore, the Mongols were remarkably open to foreign merchants and craftsmen. They recognized the value of their skills and the goods they brought. Many foreign merchants, such as the famous Marco Polo, were welcomed at the Mongol courts and even employed in administrative capacities. This cosmopolitan outlook fostered an environment conducive to international trade and cultural exchange, attracting merchants from far-flung lands to the Mongol domains. The revitalized Silk Road under Mongol rule saw an unprecedented flow of goods across Eurasia. From the east, Chinese silks, porcelain, lacquerware, and tea flowed westward. Gunpowder, printing technology, and the compass, all Chinese inventions, also began their journey to Europe, profoundly impacting its technological development. From the West, European textiles, glass, metalwork, and various luxury goods found new markets in the East. The Middle East contributed spices, perfumes, and advanced scientific instruments, while Central Asia provided precious stones, furs, and horses. This exchange was not limited to luxury items. Agricultural products, such as new varieties of rice and fruits, were also disseminated across the empire, contributing to agricultural innovation and diversification. The sheer volume and variety of goods exchanged transformed local economies and introduced new tastes and preferences to distant populations, laying the groundwork for a more globalized economy. The exchange of ideas and technologies, perhaps even more significant than the exchange of goods, was the unprecedented diffusion of ideas, knowledge, and technologies. The Pax Mongolica created a vast intellectual highway, allowing scholars, scientists, artists, and religious figures to travel freely and interact with their counterparts from different civilizations. This cross-cultural intellectual exchange had a profound impact on the development of science, mathematics, medicine, and philosophy. Chinese advancements in astronomy, mathematics, and engineering, including the use of paper and printing, were transmitted to the Islamic world and eventually to Europe. Islamic scholars, who had preserved and expanded upon ancient Greek and Roman knowledge, shared their expertise in medicine, algebra, and optics. The Mongols themselves, while not primarily innovators in these fields, acted as facilitators, providing the infrastructure and the tolerant environment necessary for this intellectual flourishing. For example, the knowledge of gunpowder, initially a Chinese invention, was refined and adapted by Islamic engineers before making its way to Europe, where it revolutionized warfare. The compass, crucial for navigation, also spread westward, enabling the age of exploration. The concept of paper money, used extensively in the Yuan dynasty, influenced European financial systems. The dark side of exchange, the Black Death. However, the increased interconnectedness brought about by the Mongol Empire also had a devastating consequence: the rapid spread of the Black Death. The very trade routes that facilitated the exchange of goods and ideas also served as conduits for the plague, which originated in Central Asia and spread along the Silk Road to the Middle East and Europe, causing immense demographic and social upheaval. This tragic episode serves as a stark reminder that increased global interaction, while bringing many benefits, also carries inherent risks. Long-term impact on global development. Despite the devastating impact of the Black Death, the long-term legacy of the Mongol Empire in global trade and interconnectedness is undeniable. The Pax Mongolica laid the groundwork for a more integrated world economy and fostered a spirit of cross-cultural exchange that would continue long after the empire's fragmentation. It stimulated innovation, broadened intellectual horizons, and contributed to the eventual rise of Europe as a global power, as it absorbed and adapted many of the technologies and ideas that flowed westward along the Mongol-secured Silk Road. The Mongol Empire, therefore, stands as a pivotal moment in the history of globalization. It demonstrated the transformative power of a unified political entity in facilitating trade and cultural exchange on an unprecedented scale. The echoes of their impact on global commerce and the flow of knowledge continue to resonate, reminding us of the intricate and often unexpected ways in which historical events shape the world we inhabit today. The Mongol impact on Europe and the Middle East. Fear, fascination, and transformation. The Mongol invasions of Europe and the Middle East in the 13th century sent shockwaves across these regions, leaving a legacy of fear, destruction, but also unexpected transformation. While the initial encounters were marked by brutal conquests and widespread devastation, the subsequent Mongol rule and interactions had profound and lasting effects on the political, social, and cultural landscapes of these civilizations. The Golden Horde and Eastern Europe, a shadow of dominance. The Golden Horde, one of the four major khanates that emerged from the fragmentation of the Mongol Empire, established its dominance over much of Eastern Europe, including the Rus Principalities, modern-day Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. The Mongol invasions of Rus in the 1230s and 1240s were devastating, leading to the destruction of numerous cities, the slaughter of populations, and the imposition of a heavy tribute system. For over 2 centuries, the Rus principalities remained vassals of the Golden Horde, a period often referred to as the Tatar yoke. This period of Mongol rule had a profound impact on the development of Russia. While it isolated Russia from the burgeoning Renaissance in Western Europe, it also contributed to the centralization of power in Moscow, which eventually emerged as the dominant Russian principality. The Mongols introduced new administrative techniques, including a more efficient tax collection system and a sophisticated postal network. They also influenced Russian military organization and tactics, particularly in cavalry warfare. The long period of Mongol suzerainty shaped Russian political culture, fostering a tradition of autocratic rule and a strong central state. Beyond Russia, the Golden Horde launched devastating raids into Poland, Hungary, and other parts of Central Europe. While these invasions did not result in permanent Mongol occupation, they caused immense destruction and instilled a deep fear of the Tatars that persisted for centuries. The memory of these invasions played a significant role in shaping European perceptions of the East and contributed to the development of defensive strategies against future nomadic incursions. The Ilkhanate in the Middle East, a cultural synthesis. In the Middle East, the Mongol impact was equally transformative, though perhaps more nuanced. The Ilkhanate, founded by Hulagu Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, established its rule over Persia, Mesopotamia, and parts of Anatolia. The initial conquests were marked by extreme brutality, most notably the sack of Baghdad in 1258, which led to the destruction of the Abbasid Caliphate, a symbolic blow to the Islamic world. However, unlike the Golden Horde, the Ilkhans eventually converted to Islam, beginning with Ghazan Khan in the late 13th century. This conversion marked a significant turning point as the Mongol rulers began to integrate more fully into Persian society and culture. They became patrons of Islamic art, architecture, and science, leading to a remarkable cultural synthesis. Persian became the administrative language of the Ilkhanate, and Persian scholars and artists flourished under Mongol patronage. The Ilkhanate period witnessed significant advancements in astronomy, mathematics, and medicine. Observatories were built, and new astronomical tables were compiled. Historians like Rashid al-Din produced monumental works such as the Jami al-Tawarik Compendium of Chronicles, which provided a comprehensive history of the world, including detailed accounts of the Mongols. This intellectual flourishing, often referred to as the Ilkhanid Renaissance, demonstrated the Mongols' ability to absorb and foster the cultural traditions of the peoples they conquered. Economically, the Ilkhanate also saw a revitalization of trade, as it became a crucial link in the Silk Road network. The Mongols actively promoted commerce, and the stability they brought, despite the initial destruction, allowed for the recovery and growth of urban centers. However, the Ilkhanate also faced internal strife and economic challenges, eventually fragmenting into smaller dynasties in the mid-14th century. The Mamluks, in the halt of Mongol expansion, one of the most significant events in the Mongol expansion into the Middle East was their encounter with the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. In 1260, the Mamluks, a military slave dynasty, decisively defeated the Mongol army at the Battle of Ain Jalut in Palestine. This battle was a pivotal moment, marking the first major defeat of the Mongol army in open battle and effectively halting their westward expansion into the Levant and North Africa. The Mamluks became the unlikely saviors of the Islamic heartland, preventing the Mongols from reaching Egypt and potentially altering the course of Islamic history. Overall impact and legacy. The Mongol impact on Europe and the Middle East was complex and multifaceted. In Eastern Europe, particularly Russia, their rule led to a period of isolation, but also contributed to the centralization of power and the development of a distinct political culture. In the Middle East, while the initial conquests were devastating, the Ilkhanate eventually fostered a period of cultural synthesis and intellectual flourishing, particularly after their conversion to Islam. The Mongol invasions also forced European powers to confront a formidable external threat, leading to increased diplomatic efforts and a greater awareness of the vastness of the world beyond their borders. The accounts of travelers like Marco Polo, who journeyed through the Mongol Empire, sparked European curiosity about the East and contributed to the eventual age of exploration. In essence, the Mongols, through their conquest and subsequent rule, acted as a powerful catalyst for change in both Europe and the Middle East. They disrupted existing political orders, introduced new administrative and military practices, and facilitated an unprecedented exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies. Their legacy in these regions is a testament to their transformative power, a blend of destruction and creation that reshaped the course of history in profound and enduring ways. The Mongol impact on Asia, transformation and enduring influence. The Mongol Empire's most profound and lasting impact was undoubtedly felt across Asia, the very continent from which it sprang. From the vast steppes of Central Asia to the ancient civilizations of China, the Mongol conquests and subsequent rule brought about radical transformations, reshaping political landscapes, fostering cultural syntheses, and leaving an indelible mark on the societies they governed. This section will delve into the specific ways the Mongols influenced China and Central Asia, highlighting both the destructive and constructive aspects of their legacy. China, the Yuan dynasty, and a new imperial order. China, with its long and rich history of imperial rule, presented the Mongols with their greatest challenge and their most significant prize. The conquest of the Song dynasty was a protracted and arduous affair spanning decades. However, once conquered, China became the heartland of the Mongol Empire under Kublai Khan, who established the Yuan dynasty 1271-1368. This marked the first time in Chinese history that the entire country was ruled by a foreign nomadic power. The Mongol rule in China was a complex blend of adaptation and assertion of Mongol identity. Kublai Khan, recognizing the need to govern a vast and sophisticated agricultural society, adopted many aspects of Chinese imperial administration. He retained the traditional bureaucratic structure, employed Chinese scholars and officials, though often in lower ranks, and continued the use of the imperial examination system, albeit with modifications. He also invested in infrastructure projects, such as extending the Grand Canal, which facilitated grain transport and communication, and improving roads. However, the Mongols also maintained a distinct social hierarchy, placing themselves at the top, followed by various non-Han ethnic groups, such as Central Asians and Persians, then Northern Chinese, and finally the Southern Chinese. This system, while designed to maintain Mongol dominance, also led to resentment among the Han Chinese population. The Mongols also introduced new legal codes and maintained their own military structure distinct from the Chinese. They encouraged trade, particularly maritime trade, and fostered cultural exchange, bringing Persian and Central Asian influences into China. Despite the initial brutality of the conquest, the Yuan dynasty saw a period of relative stability and prosperity, particularly in the early years of Kublai Khan's reign. The Pax Mongolica facilitated the safe passage of goods and ideas, leading to a flourishing of trade and cultural exchange. Chinese innovations such as gunpowder, printing, and the compass continued their westward journey, while new crops and technologies from the west were introduced to China. The Yuan period also saw significant developments in drama, literature, and painting, often reflecting a blend of Mongol and Chinese aesthetics. However, the Yuan dynasty eventually succumbed to internal strife, economic mismanagement, and widespread rebellions fueled by resentment against foreign rule and natural disasters. The Ming dynasty, founded by a Han Chinese peasant leader, eventually overthrew the Yuan in 1368, marking the end of Mongol rule in China. Despite its relatively short duration, the Yuan dynasty left a lasting impact on China, influencing its political structure, economic policies, and cultural development, and forever altering its place in the global network of trade and ideas. Central Asia, a crossroads of cultures and a legacy of fragmentation. Central Asia, the ancestral homeland of the Mongols, experienced a particularly profound and often devastating impact from the Mongol conquest. The region, A vibrant crossroads of trade and culture was home to numerous thriving cities and sophisticated irrigation systems. The initial Mongol invasions, particularly those led by Genghis Khan against the Khwarezmian Empire, were characterized by extreme brutality and widespread destruction. Cities like Samarkand, Bukhara, and Urgench were sacked, their populations massacred, and their agricultural infrastructure destroyed. This devastation led to a significant demographic decline and a period of economic disruption. However, after the initial period of destruction, Central Asia became the domain of the Chagatai Khanate, another successor state of the Mongol Empire. While the region suffered from the initial conquest, it also benefited from the Pax Mongolica as trade routes were reestablished and secured. The Mongols, despite their nomadic roots, recognized the importance of urban centers for trade and administration, and many cities were eventually rebuilt, albeit sometimes on a smaller scale. One of the most significant long-term impacts of Mongol rule in Central Asia was the profound demographic and cultural shift. The Mongol invasions led to the Turkification of large parts of Central Asia as Turkic nomadic tribes, often allied with the Mongols, migrated into the region. This process intensified the existing Turkic presence and contributed to the linguistic and ethnic makeup of modern Central Asia. The Mongol legacy also influenced the political structures of subsequent Central Asian states, with many rulers tracing their lineage back to Genghis Khan. Furthermore, the Mongol period in Central Asia saw a continued flourishing of Islamic scholarship and art, particularly in cities like Samarkand and Bukhara, which became centers of learning and artistic production. The exchange of ideas and technologies along the Silk Road continued, with Central Asia serving as a crucial intermediary between East and West. However, the region also experienced periods of fragmentation and instability as the Chagatai Khanate itself eventually broke into smaller warring factions. And in conclusion, the Mongol impact on Asia was a complex tapestry of destruction and creation. In China, they established a new imperial dynasty that, despite its foreign origins, adopted many Chinese administrative practices and fostered cultural exchange. In Central Asia, while the initial conquests were devastating, the region eventually became a vital link in the revitalized Silk Road, experiencing significant demographic and cultural shifts. The enduring influence of the Mongol Empire on the political, social, and cultural landscapes of Asia remains a testament to its transformative power and its pivotal role in shaping the course of global history. The Grand Campaigns, conquest and expansion of the Mongol Empire. The story of the Mongol Empire is inextricably linked with its relentless and astonishing military expansion. Under the leadership of Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongol armies swept across Eurasia, conquering vast territories and establishing an empire of unprecedented scale. These grand campaigns were not merely acts of aggression, but meticulously planned operations that showcased the Mongol strategic brilliance, tactical superiority, and unwavering determination. Understanding the key conquest and their consequences is essential to grasping the full impact of the Mongol phenomenon. The conquest of northern China in the Jin dynasty, 1211-1234. Genghis Khan's first major foreign conquest was against the Jin dynasty, which controlled much of northern China. The Jin, a powerful and sophisticated empire, had long been a dominant force in the region. The initial Mongol campaigns, beginning in 1211, were characterized by a series of devastating raids and sieges. The Mongols, with their superior cavalry and innovative siege tactics, often learned from Chinese engineers they captured, gradually wore down the Jin defenses. The capture of Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing, the Jin capital, in 1215 was a significant victory, though the Jin continued to resist for nearly 2 more decades. The conquest of northern China provided the Mongols with immense resources, including wealth, agricultural produce, and, crucially, access to Chinese technology and administrative expertise. They learned about siege engines, gunpowder, and sophisticated bureaucratic systems which they would later adapt and integrate into their own empire. This conquest also marked a shift in Mongol strategy as they began to transition from purely nomadic raiding to the administration of settled agricultural societies. The destruction of the Khwarezmian Empire, 1219-1221, one of the most brutal and decisive campaigns was against the Khwarezmian Empire, a powerful Muslim state that stretched across Central Asia and Persia. The conflict began when the Khwarezmian Shah executed Mongol envoys and merchants, an act that Genghis Khan considered a grave insult and a violation of diplomatic norms. What followed was a swift and devastating Mongol invasion that showcased their military might and ruthlessness. Cities like Bukhara, Samarkand, and Urgench, once vibrant centers of Islamic learning and trade, were systematically destroyed, their populations massacred or enslaved. The Mongols employed a scorched earth policy, devastating agricultural lands and irrigation systems. This campaign served as a stark warning to any who dared to defy Mongol authority, establishing their reputation for unparalleled ferocity. While the destruction was immense, the conquest of the Khwarezmian Empire opened up the Silk Road to the Mongols, paving the way for their westward expansion and the subsequent Pax Mongolica. The Mongol invasion of Rus, 1237-1242. Following Genghis Khan's death, his successors continued the expansion. Batu Khan, a grandson of Genghis, led the Mongol invasion of Rus, the loose federation of East Slavic principalities. The Rus's principalities, fragmented and disunited, were unable to mount an effective defense against the highly organized Mongol army. Cities like Ryazan, Vladimir, and Kiev were sacked and burned, and their populations were decimated. The Mongol invasion had a profound and lasting impact on Russian history, leading to the subjugation of the Rus principalities under the Golden Horde for over 2 centuries. This period, often referred to as the Tatar yoke, isolated Russia from the cultural and intellectual developments of Western Europe, but also contributed to the centralization of power in Moscow and the eventual emergence of a unified Russian state. The Mongols also introduced new administrative and military techniques, influencing Russian political culture and military organization. The conquest of the Southern Song dynasty, 1235-1279. The conquest of the Southern Song dynasty in China was the longest and most challenging of the Mongol campaigns. The Southern Song was a technologically advanced and culturally sophisticated empire with a large population and formidable defenses. The Mongols, under the leadership of Kublai Khan, employed a combination of military pressure, diplomatic maneuvering, and economic blockade to gradually wear down the Song resistance. They utilized their naval power, built with the help of Chinese engineers, to control the Yangtze River, a crucial artery for the Song. The fall of the Southern Song in 1279 marked the complete conquest of China by the Mongols and the establishment of the Yuan dynasty. This victory provided the Mongols with immense wealth, a vast population, and access to the full range of Chinese administrative and technological expertise. It also transformed the nature of the Mongol Empire as it shifted its center of gravity eastward and became more deeply integrated with Chinese culture. The campaigns in the Middle East and the Ilkhanate, 1250s, 1260s. Hulagu Khan, another grandson of Genghis, led the Mongol campaigns into the Middle East. His forces swept through Persia, destroying the assassin strongholds and eventually reaching Baghdad, the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate. The sack of Baghdad in 1258 was a catastrophic event, leading to the destruction of the city, the massacre of its inhabitants, and the symbolic end of the Islamic Golden Age. The Mongol advance continued into Syria, where they clashed with the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. The Battle of Ain Jalut in 1260 was a pivotal moment as the Mamluks decisively defeated the Mongol army, marking the first major defeat of the Mongols in open battle and effectively halting their westward expansion into the Levant and North Africa. Despite this setback, the Mongols established the Ilkhanate in Persia, which would eventually convert to Islam and become a significant center of Islamic culture and learning. The legacy of conquest. The Mongol conquests were characterized by their speed, scale, and often brutal efficiency. They reshaped the political map of Eurasia, leading to the rise and fall of numerous states and empires. While the destruction they wrought was immense, their conquests also inadvertently facilitated an unprecedented exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies across continents. The fear they inspired was undeniable, but their campaigns also forced civilizations to adapt, innovate, and in some cases, to forge new identities. The grand campaigns of the Mongol Empire remain a testament to the transformative power of military might and the complex, often paradoxical, ways in which history unfolds. Cultural flourishing and artistic synthesis, the Mongol legacy in arts and sciences. While the Mongol Empire is often associated with military conquest and nomadic life, its vast reach and policy of religious tolerance inadvertently fostered a remarkable period of cultural flourishing and artistic synthesis across Eurasia. As the Mongols established their rule over diverse civilizations, they became patrons of arts and sciences, leading to a vibrant exchange of ideas and the creation of unique artistic expressions that blended nomadic aesthetics with the sophisticated traditions of their conquered territories. This cultural legacy, particularly evident in the Yuan dynasty in China and the Ilkhanate in Persia, stands as a testament to the empire's complex and multifaceted impact. The Yuan dynasty, a fusion of Mongol and Chinese art. Under the Yuan dynasty, 1271-1368 in China, Mongol patronage led to a fascinating fusion of artistic styles. While the Mongols initially favored their own nomadic art forms such as intricate metalwork, textiles, and equestrian-themed art, they quickly recognized and appreciated the rich artistic traditions of China. Kublai Khan and his successors became significant patrons of Chinese painting, calligraphy, ceramics, and drama, leading to a period of innovation and adaptation. In painting, the Yuan dynasty saw the rise of the literati painting movement, where scholar artists expressed their personal feelings and philosophical ideas through ink and wash landscapes. While this style had roots in earlier Chinese traditions, Mongol patronage and the relative freedom from courtly constraints allowed it to flourish. Yuan ceramics, particularly blue and white porcelain, reached new heights of technical and artistic excellence. The cobalt blue pigment, imported from Persia along the Silk Road, combined with Chinese porcelain making techniques, created a distinctive and highly sought after style that would influence global ceramics for centuries. Drama and literature also thrived under the Yuan. The zaju, a form of Chinese opera, became immensely popular, often incorporating themes of justice, loyalty, and rebellion, reflecting the social and political realities of the time. Yuan literature also saw the development of vernacular fiction, laying the groundwork for later Chinese novels. The Mongols, despite their foreign origin, contributed to the preservation and development of Chinese cultural forms, albeit with their own unique imprint. The Ilkhanate, the Persian Renaissance under Mongol rule. In Persia, the Ilkhanate, 1256-1335, witnessed a remarkable cultural and intellectual renaissance, particularly after the conversion of the Ilkhans to Islam. While the initial Mongol conquest brought immense destruction, the subsequent period of stability and patronage led to a flourishing of Persian art, architecture, and science. The Ilkhans, eager to legitimize their rule and integrate into Persian society, became enthusiastic patrons of Islamic learning and artistic endeavors. Architecture under the Ilkhans saw the construction of magnificent mosques, madrasas, religious schools, and mausoleums, often incorporating new decorative elements and structural innovations. The city of Tabriz became a major artistic center, attracting artists, calligraphers, and craftsmen from across the Islamic world. Manuscript illumination reached its zenith with lavishly illustrated copies of epic poems like the Shahnameh, Book of Kings, and scientific treatises. These manuscripts often blended traditional Persian miniature painting with influences from Chinese art, such as cloud motifs and dragon imagery, a direct result of the cross-cultural exchange facilitated by the Mongol Empire. In the realm of science, the Ilkhanate was a hub of intellectual activity. The Maragay Observatory, founded by the Ilkhan Hulagu Khan, became one of the most advanced astronomical observatories of its time. Scholars like Nasr al-Din al-Tusi made significant contributions to astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy, and their works influenced later European scientists. Persian historians such as Rashid al-Din produced monumental universal histories that incorporated information from across the Mongol Empire, including detailed accounts of China and Europe, demonstrating a truly global perspective. The YAM system and the spread of knowledge. The sophisticated YAM system, primarily a postal and communication network, also played a crucial role in the dissemination of artistic and scientific knowledge. Scholars, artists, and craftsmen traveled along these secure routes, carrying with them ideas, techniques, and artistic motifs. This facilitated the rapid spread of innovations from Chinese printing methods to Persian astronomical instruments across the vast Eurasian landmass. Legacy of cultural exchange. The cultural and artistic achievements of the Mongol Empire were a direct consequence of its unique position as a bridge between East and West. While the Mongols were not always the originators of these innovations, they acted as powerful catalysts, providing the political stability, economic infrastructure, and tolerant environment necessary for such a vibrant cross-cultural exchange. The artistic and intellectual syntheses that emerged during this period left a lasting impact on the regions they governed, influencing subsequent artistic movements and scientific thought. The legacy of the Mongol Empire in arts and sciences reminds us that even periods of intense conflict can inadvertently lead to unexpected periods of cultural flourishing. It highlights the interconnectedness of human civilization and the profound ways in which different cultures can influence and enrich one another, leaving behind a rich tapestry of human creativity and intellectual achievement that continues to inspire and inform us today. The lives of the common people beyond the steppe and the court. While the grand narratives of the Mongol Empire often focus on the exploits of its khans, the military campaigns, and the vast trade networks, it is equally important to understand the daily lives of the common people who form the vast majority of its population. These were the farmers, artisans, laborers, and pastoralists whose toil sustained the empire and whose experiences, though less documented, were profoundly shaped by Mongol rule. Their lives varied significantly depending on their geographic location, their traditional way of life, and their relationship with the Mongol authorities. Life in settled agricultural societies, China and Persia. In the settled agricultural regions, particularly China and Persia, the Mongol conquest brought both disruption and eventually a degree of stability. Initially, the invasions were devastating, leading to widespread destruction of cities, irrigation systems, and agricultural lands. Populations were massacred or displaced, and the economic infrastructure was severely damaged. For the common farmer, this meant immense suffering, loss of livelihood, and often forced labor or enslavement. However, once the initial period of conquest subsided, the Mongols, particularly in the Yuan dynasty and the Ilkhanate, recognized the importance of a stable agricultural base for their empire. They often repaired irrigation systems, encouraged agricultural production, and implemented tax policies to extract resources. For the Chinese peasant, life under the Yuan dynasty meant continued cultivation of rice, wheat, and other traditional crops. They were subject to taxes, often paid in grain or labor, and sometimes conscripted for public works projects, such as the extension of the Grand Canal. Despite the foreign rule, daily life for many peasants continued in much the same way as before, albeit with new overlords and sometimes heavier burdens. Villages remained the primary social units, and traditional customs and religious practices largely persisted. However, the social hierarchy was altered, with the Mongols and their allies at the top, and the Han Chinese often relegated to a lower status. This could lead to resentment and occasional rebellions, particularly when economic conditions worsened due to natural disasters or excessive taxation. In Persia, the common people, primarily farmers and artisans, also experienced a similar trajectory. After the initial devastation, the Ilkhans encouraged the rebuilding of cities and agricultural lands. Peasants continued to cultivate crops like wheat, barley, and cotton, and were subject to taxes and levies. The Pax Mongolica, by securing trade routes, also benefited some artisans and merchants in urban centers as demand for their goods increased. However, the burden of supporting the Mongol military and administration could be heavy, and famines were not uncommon, particularly in times of drought or political instability. Life for nomadic pastoralists, the steppe and beyond. For the nomadic pastoralists, particularly those in the Mongol homeland and the vast steppes of Central Asia, life continued to revolve around their herds. Their daily routines were dictated by the needs of their livestock, horses, sheep, goats, and yaks. They moved seasonally, seeking fresh pastures and water, living in portable yurts that could be easily transported. Their diet consisted primarily of meat and dairy products, supplemented by wild plants and hunted game. While they were the ruling class, their lives were still physically demanding and tied to the rhythms of nature. Men were primarily responsible for herding, hunting, and military duties, while women managed the household, processed dairy products, and raised children. Children learned to ride and hunt from a very young age, developing the skills necessary for survival in a harsh steppe environment. The Mongol expansion meant that many nomadic groups, both Mongol and Turkic, migrated into new territories, bringing their pastoralist way of life with them, sometimes clashing with settled populations. Artisans and craftsmen valued skills. Artisans and craftsmen, regardless of their origin, were highly valued by the Mongols. They recognized the importance of skilled labor for producing weapons, armor, luxury goods, and for constructing and maintaining cities. Conquered artisans were often spared from massacres and relocated to Mongol centers where their skills could be utilized. In the Yuan dynasty, for example, Chinese artisans continued to produce exquisite porcelain, silks, and lacquerware, often incorporating Mongol motifs or catering to Mongol tastes. In the Ilkhanate, Persian artisans continued their traditions of manuscript illumination, ceramics, and metalwork, often blending their indigenous styles with influences from China and Central Asia. These skilled workers, while still subject to Mongol authority, often enjoyed a relatively better status due to the demand for their expertise. Their work contributed significantly to the cultural and artistic legacy of the Mongol Empire. Merchants and traders, the beneficiaries of the Pax Mongolica. Merchants and traders, both local and international, were among the primary beneficiaries of the Pax Mongolica. The security and standardization of the Silk Road under Mongol rule led to an unprecedented boom in long-distance trade. Merchants could travel more safely and efficiently, and the reduction of arbitrary tolls and taxes made their ventures more profitable. This led to the growth of merchant communities in major cities across the empire, from Beijing to Tabriz. While the Mongols themselves were not traditionally merchants, they understood the economic benefits of trade and actively encouraged it. They issued paper money in the Yuan dynasty, which facilitated large-scale transactions, and they welcomed foreign merchants to their courts. This period saw a significant increase in the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies, enriching not only the Mongol elite, but also many of the common people involved in the production and transportation of these goods. Challenges and resilience. Despite the periods of stability and prosperity, life for the common people under Mongol rule was often challenging. They faced the constant threat of famine due to natural disasters or military campaigns, the burden of heavy taxation, and the potential for forced conscription into the army or for labor. Disease, particularly the Black Death, which spread rapidly along the Mongol trade routes, also took a devastating toll on populations across Eurasia. Yet through it all, the common people demonstrated remarkable resilience. They continued their daily routines, adapted to new circumstances, and preserved their cultural traditions. Their labor and ingenuity were the bedrock upon which the vast Mongol Empire was built, and their stories, though often untold, are an essential part of its complex and enduring legacy. Understanding their lives provides a crucial human dimension to the grand narrative of Mongol conquest and empire building. The Mongol military machine, training, discipline, and innovation. The formidable reputation of the Mongol army was not solely built on the genius of Genghis Khan or the sheer number of their warriors. It was the product of an unparalleled system of training, an ironclad discipline, and a constant willingness to innovate and adapt These elements transformed a collection of nomadic horsemen into the most effective fighting force of their era, capable of conquering empires and reshaping continents. Early training, forged in the steppe. From a very young age, every Mongol child, male and female, was immersed in the skills essential for survival and warfare on the steppe. Boys learned to ride almost as soon as they could walk, becoming expert horsemen by their early teens. They were taught to hunt, track, and use the composite bow with deadly accuracy from horseback. This early and continuous exposure to equestrian and archery skills meant that by the time they reached adulthood, Mongol warriors possessed a natural proficiency that few professional armies could match. Hunting expeditions, particularly the large-scale nerds, served as crucial training exercises. These hunts involved thousands of riders forming a vast circle, gradually tightening it to trap all the animals within. This required immense coordination, communication, and strategic thinking, mirroring the tactics used in battle. It honed their ability to work as a cohesive unit, to understand complex maneuvers, and to execute orders with precision. The Nerge was, in essence, a live-fire military drill, preparing them for the rigors and complexities of large-scale warfare. Iron discipline, the foundation of cohesion. Genghis Khan understood that a large army, however skilled, could easily devolve into chaos without strict discipline. He implemented a code of conduct that was enforced with unwavering severity. Disobedience, cowardice, or desertion were met with harsh penalties, often death, not just for the individual, but sometimes for their entire unit. This collective responsibility fostered a strong sense of accountability and mutual reliance. Every warrior knew that their life and the lives of their comrades depended on the adherence to orders and the maintenance of formation. This discipline extended beyond the battlefield. Looting before a battle was strictly forbidden, as it could break formation and expose warriors to unnecessary risks. All spoils of war were collected and then distributed by the leadership, ensuring fairness and preventing internal squabbles. This centralized control over resources further reinforced the authority of the commanders and maintained the army's cohesion. The decimal system of organization, with its clear hierarchy of commanders, Arban, Jagan, Mingen, Tumen, also contributed to this discipline. Orders flowed efficiently from the top down, and each commander was responsible for the performance of his unit. This structure ensured that even in the heat of battle, the Mongol army could maintain its formation, execute complex maneuvers, and respond swiftly to changing circumstances. Adaptation and innovation, learning from the conquered. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Mongol military was its pragmatism and willingness to learn from the peoples they conquered. Unlike many conquerors who imposed their own methods, the Mongols were keen observers and rapid adopters of superior technologies and tactics. This adaptability was a key factor in their sustained success, allowing them to overcome diverse enemies with different military traditions. Their initial strength lay in mounted archery and rapid maneuvers, ideal for open steppe warfare. However, when they encountered fortified cities in China and Persia, they quickly realized the limitations of their traditional tactics. They did not hesitate to incorporate siege warfare techniques from the Chinese, employing engineers, catapults, trebuchets, and even gunpowder weapons. They learned to build and operate sophisticated siege engines, and in some cases even diverted rivers to flood enemy cities. Similarly, when faced with naval powers, particularly in their attempts to invade Japan and Southeast Asia, they began to build and utilize fleets, often employing Chinese and Korean shipbuilders and sailors. Their ability to integrate diverse military specialists, engineers, doctors, scribes, and translators into their army further enhanced their capabilities. This constant process of learning, adapting, and innovating ensured that the Mongol military remained at the cutting edge of warfare for decades. Psychological warfare, the weapon of fear. Beyond their physical might, the Mongols were masters of psychological warfare. They understood the power of fear and used it to their advantage. Their reputation for ruthlessness, often exaggerated by their own propaganda, frequently preceded their arrival, causing cities to surrender without a fight. They would often offer terms of surrender, but if rejected, the consequences were dire, with entire populations massacred as a warning to others. This policy, while brutal, often saved them resources and lives by encouraging swift capitulation. They also employed tactics like spreading rumors, creating diversions, and using false flags to sow confusion and demoralize their enemies. The sheer speed and unexpectedness of their attacks often left their adversaries bewildered and unable to mount an effective defense. This combination of overwhelming force and psychological manipulation was a potent weapon that contributed significantly to their rapid conquest. In conclusion, the Mongol military was a testament to the power of systematic training, unyielding discipline, and continuous innovation. Forged in the crucible of the steppe, refined through relentless campaigning and constantly adapting to new challenges, it became an unparalleled force that reshaped the military landscape of Eurasia. The legacy of their military machine continues to fascinate and instruct, demonstrating how a nomadic people, through sheer will and strategic brilliance, could build an empire of unprecedented scale and influence. The intellectual crossroads, knowledge exchange, and cultural synthesis under Mongol rule. Beyond the dramatic narratives of conquest and the practicalities of governance, the Mongol Empire served as an extraordinary catalyst for intellectual and cultural exchange across Eurasia. The Pax Mongolica, by securing vast trade routes and fostering a climate of relative religious tolerance, inadvertently created a massive intellectual crossroads where ideas, technologies, and artistic styles flowed freely between East and West. This unprecedented diffusion of knowledge had a profound and lasting impact on the development of science, philosophy, and the arts in numerous civilizations. The Silk Road, a conduit for ideas, just as the Silk Road facilitated the movement of goods, it also became a vibrant artery for the transmission of intellectual capital. Scholars, scientists, artisans, and religious figures traveled across the Mongol Empire, carrying with them not only their own traditions, but also absorbing and disseminating new ideas encountered along their journeys. This direct contact between diverse intellectual traditions led to a cross-pollination of knowledge that was unprecedented in scale and scope. From China, advanced technologies such as printing, gunpowder, and the compass made their way westward. Printing, initially developed for Buddhist texts, revolutionized the dissemination of knowledge in Europe, laying the groundwork for the Renaissance and the scientific revolution. Gunpowder, first used for fireworks and then for rudimentary weapons in China, was adopted and refined by Islamic engineers before reaching Europe, fundamentally altering the nature of warfare. The compass, crucial for navigation, facilitated the age of exploration, allowing European mariners to venture further and more confidently across the oceans. Islamic Golden Age, knowledge to the east and west. The Islamic world, which had preserved and expanded upon the knowledge of ancient Greece and Rome during its own Golden Age, played a crucial role in this intellectual exchange. Arab and Persian scholars had made significant advancements in mathematics, algebra, trigonometry, astronomy, observatories, accurate star charts, medicine, hospitals, surgical techniques, and philosophy. Under Mongol rule, particularly in the Ilkhanate, these intellectual traditions continued to flourish and were transmitted both eastward to China and westward to Europe. For instance, the Mirage Observatory in Persia, established under Ilkhanid patronage, became a leading center for astronomical research. Its scholars, like Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, developed new models of planetary motion that influenced later European astronomers, including Copernicus. Persian medical texts and practices also found their way to China, influencing traditional Chinese medicine, while Arabic numerals and the concept of zero, originating in India but transmitted through the Islamic world, became fundamental to European mathematics. Chinese innovations and their global impact, Chinese intellectual achievements, particularly during the Yuan dynasty, also had a significant global impact. Beyond the aforementioned printing, gunpowder, and compass, Chinese advancements in hydraulic engineering, metallurgy, and agricultural techniques were disseminated. The Mongols, recognizing the practical value of these innovations, actively encouraged their spread within their empire. For example, Chinese agricultural methods such as new rice strains and irrigation techniques were introduced to Central Asia and Persia, improving agricultural productivity in those regions. Chinese cartography and geographical knowledge also expanded significantly under the Yuan, as Mongol expeditions and trade routes provided new information about distant lands. This expanded geographical understanding contributed to the broader intellectual landscape of Eurasia, challenging existing notions of the world and paving the way for future explorations. The role of translators and scholars. The vibrant intellectual exchange under Mongol rule was facilitated by a diverse community of translators and scholars. The Mongol courts, particularly in the Yuan dynasty and the Ilkhanate, became cosmopolitan centers where individuals from various cultural and linguistic backgrounds collaborated. Texts were translated between Chinese, Persian, Arabic, Syriac, Latin, and other languages, allowing knowledge to transcend linguistic barriers. This multilingual environment fostered a unique intellectual dynamism. Scholars from different traditions engaged in debates, shared research, and contributed to collective projects. For example, the compilation of universal histories, such as Rashid al-Din's Jami al-Tawarikh, was a monumental undertaking that drew upon historical records and knowledge from across the Mongol Empire, demonstrating a truly global perspective on history. The dark side of exchange, the Black Death. However, this unprecedented interconnectedness also had a devastating consequence. The very trade routes that facilitated the exchange of goods and ideas also served as conduits for the rapid spread of diseases. The most catastrophic example was the Black Death, which originated in Central Asia and traveled along the Silk Road, reaching the Middle East and Europe in the mid-14th century. This pandemic decimated populations across Eurasia, leading to immense social, economic, and political upheaval. The Black Death serves as a stark reminder that while global exchange can bring immense benefits, it also carries inherent risks, particularly in the absence of modern medical understanding and public health measures. Enduring legacy of intellectual synthesis. Despite the tragic impact of the Black Death, the intellectual and cultural legacy of the Mongol Empire is undeniable. It acted as a powerful bridge between civilizations, accelerating the diffusion of knowledge and technologies that had been developing in isolation for centuries. The cross-cultural fertilization that occurred during the Pax Mongolica laid crucial groundwork for subsequent periods of innovation and exploration in both East and West. It demonstrated the profound impact that political unity and open communication can have on the global intellectual landscape, reminding us that even periods of intense conflict can inadvertently foster remarkable advancements in human knowledge and understanding. The echoes of this intellectual synthesis continue to resonate, shaping the trajectory of global development and reminding us of the intricate web of connections that bind human history. The spiritual tapestry, religion and religious tolerance in the Mongol Empire. One of the most remarkable and often surprising aspects of the Mongol Empire was its consistent policy of religious tolerance. In an era often characterized by religious wars and persecution, the Mongols, despite their own shamanistic traditions, generally allowed the diverse peoples within their vast domains to practice their own faiths without coercion. This pragmatic approach to religion was a cornerstone of their governance, contributing to the stability of their empire and fostering an unprecedented exchange of religious ideas across Eurasia. Traditional Mongol shamanism, the root belief. Before their encounters with the great settled civilizations, the Mongols adhered to a form of animistic shamanism. Their spiritual world revolved around the worship of Tengri, the eternal blue sky, as the supreme deity, and Itugan, the Earth Mother. They believed in a multitude of spirits inhabiting natural phenomena, mountains, rivers, trees, and animals, and sought to maintain harmony with these forces. Shamans acted as spiritual intermediaries, performing rituals, divining the future, and healing the sick. This belief system was deeply intertwined with their nomadic lifestyle, emphasizing a respectful relationship with nature and a cyclical view of time. This indigenous faith was not dogmatic or proselytizing. It focused on practical outcomes, good harvests, successful hunts, military victories, and personal well-being. This inherent flexibility and lack of a rigid hierarchical structure made it adaptable to encounters with other, more organized religions. A policy of pragmatism. Why tolerance? The Mongol policy of religious tolerance was not necessarily born out of a deep philosophical commitment to pluralism, but rather from a pragmatic understanding of governance. Genghis Khan and his successors recognized that religious persecution could lead to widespread unrest, rebellion, and economic disruption. By allowing conquered peoples to maintain their religious practices, the Mongols minimized resistance and fostered a degree of loyalty among their diverse subjects. This approach contrasted sharply with many contemporary empires that sought to impose a single state religion. Furthermore, the Mongols were keen to harness the talents and resources of their conquered populations. Many skilled administrators, scholars, and artisans were adherents of various faiths. By guaranteeing religious freedom, the Mongols could attract and retain these valuable individuals, integrating them into their administrative and economic systems. This policy also facilitated diplomatic relations, as Mongol rulers often engaged with religious leaders from different traditions, seeking their advice and sometimes even their blessings. The flourishing of diverse faiths. Under Mongol rule, a wide array of religions flourished across Eurasia. In China, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and various forms of Christianity, Nestorianism, coexisted and sometimes even experienced periods of revival. Kublai Khan, for instance, showed particular interest in Tibetan Buddhism, which gained significant influence at the Yuan court. He also welcomed Christian missionaries such as the Franciscans and maintained a curious interest in their doctrines. In the Ilkhanate, which encompassed Persia and parts of the Middle East, Islam remained the dominant religion, but various Christian sects, Nestorian, Armenian, Georgian, Judaism, and even some Buddhist communities continued to thrive. The early Ilkhans, while not Muslim themselves, often had Christian sympathies due to their alliances with European powers against the Mamluks. However, with the conversion of Ghazan Khan to Islam in the late 13th century, the Ilkhanate officially embraced Islam, though the policy of tolerance generally continued, albeit with some shifts in patronage. The Golden Horde in Eastern Europe also saw a mix of religions. While the majority of the population was Orthodox Christian, the Mongol rulers initially maintained their shamanistic beliefs. Later, many Golden Horde Khans converted to Islam, leading to the establishment of mosques and Islamic institutions. Despite this, Orthodox Christianity continued to be practiced, and the Russian Orthodox Church often received tax exemptions and privileges from the Mongol Khans, further demonstrating the Mongols' pragmatic approach to religious diversity. Interfaith dialogue and exchange. The Mongol Empire's religious tolerance created a unique environment for interfaith dialogue and exchange. Missionaries, pilgrims, and scholars from different religions traveled freely across the vast empire, engaging in discussions, debates, and sometimes even collaborations. This led to a greater understanding and sometimes even syncretism between various religious traditions. For example, Nestorian Christian communities were found as far east as China, and Buddhist ideas influenced some Islamic scholars. This period also saw the transmission of religious texts and artifacts across continents. Buddhist sutras, Christian gospels, and Islamic scientific treatises were translated and disseminated, enriching the intellectual and spiritual landscape of Eurasia. The Mongol courts often became cosmopolitan centers where religious leaders from different faiths would gather, presenting their arguments and seeking patronage, challenges, and limitations. While religious tolerance was a general policy, it was not without its limitations or occasional exceptions. There were instances of local persecution, particularly when religious groups were perceived as a threat to Mongol authority or when internal political dynamics shifted. For example, after the Ilkhans converted to Islam, there were periods of increased pressure on non-Muslim communities. However, these instances were generally localized and did not represent a systematic empire-wide policy of religious persecution. Furthermore, the Mongols, while tolerant of existing faiths, did not actively seek to convert their subjects to their own shamanistic beliefs. Their focus was on maintaining order, extracting resources, and expanding their power, rather than on religious proselytization. This pragmatic approach, while beneficial for religious diversity, also meant that the Mongols did not leave a lasting religious legacy. in the same way that other empires like the Roman or Islamic empires did. In conclusion, the Mongol Empire's policy of religious tolerance was a remarkable feature of its rule, setting it apart from many contemporary powers. Born out of pragmatism and a desire for stability, it fostered an environment where diverse faiths could coexist and even flourish. This led to an unprecedented exchange of religious ideas and practices across Eurasia, contributing to the rich cultural tapestry of the empire and leaving a unique legacy of spiritual pluralism in world history. The Mongol approach to religion serves as a powerful historical example of how tolerance, even when driven by practical considerations, can lead to unexpected periods of cultural and intellectual vibrancy. The arteries of empire, infrastructure and communication in the Mongol realm. The sheer geographical scale of the Mongol Empire necessitated an unparalleled system of infrastructure and communication to bind its disparate parts together. While often associated with nomadic movement, the Mongols, particularly after establishing settled rule, understood that effective governance, military control, and economic prosperity depended on the rapid flow of information, goods, and people. Their innovations and adaptations in this realm were crucial to their success and left a lasting legacy on the regions they controlled. The Yam system, the imperial post. The most celebrated and vital piece of Mongol infrastructure was the Yam, or Ertu, a sophisticated postal relay system that spanned the entire empire. This network of post stations, spaced at regular intervals, typically 20-30 miles apart, allowed for the rapid transmission of messages, official documents, and even light goods. At each station, fresh horses and provisions were kept ready, enabling messengers to travel at incredible speeds, covering hundreds of miles a day. The Yam was not merely a postal service, it was the nervous system of the Mongol Empire. It allowed the Great Khan to maintain tight control over his vast domains, ensuring that orders reached distant commanders swiftly, and that intelligence from the farthest corners of the empire arrived promptly at the capital. This rapid communication was essential for coordinating military campaigns, suppressing rebellions, and administering justice across diverse territories. Merchants and envoys also utilized the Yam, further facilitating trade and diplomatic relations. The efficiency of the Yam system is legendary. European travelers like Marco Polo marveled at its speed and organization, noting how it surpassed any similar system in the West. It was a testament to Mongol logistical genius, demonstrating their ability to adapt and scale existing concepts, such as earlier Chinese and Persian postal systems, to an unprecedented imperial scale. Roads and bridges, facilitating movement. While the Mongols were primarily horsemen who could traverse open terrain, they also recognized the importance of established roads and bridges for the movement of armies, merchants, and administrators, especially in settled regions. In China, the Yuan dynasty undertook significant projects to repair and extend existing road networks, including the Grand Canal, which was crucial for transporting grain from the fertile south to the northern capital of Khanbalik, Beijing. These roads, though often unpaved outside of major cities, were maintained to facilitate the passage of carts and pack animals. Bridges were constructed or repaired over rivers and ravines, ensuring continuous passage. The security provided by Mongol rule along these routes, combined with the improved infrastructure, significantly reduced travel times and made long-distance journeys safer and more predictable. This in turn boosted trade and allowed for greater cultural exchange. Waterways and canals, the lifelines of commerce. In regions like China, where river and canal systems were vital for transportation and agriculture, the Mongols invested in their maintenance and expansion. The Grand Canal, a marvel of engineering, was extended and improved under the Yuan dynasty, becoming a crucial artery for the transport of tribute grain and other goods. This investment in waterways demonstrated a pragmatic understanding of the economic and logistical needs of settled agricultural societies. Control over key waterways also provided strategic advantages, allowing for the rapid movement of troops and supplies, as seen in the Mongol conquest of the southern Song dynasty, where naval power and control of the Yangtze River were crucial. Urban centers, hubs of administration and trade. While the Mongols maintained their nomadic traditions, They also understood the importance of urban centers as hubs of administration, trade, and cultural exchange. Cities like Karakorum, the early Mongol capital, were built to serve as administrative centers, though they remained relatively small compared to the great cities of China or Persia. However, in conquered territories, existing cities were often revitalized or new ones founded. Khanbalik, Beijing, the capital of the Yuan dynasty, became a grand imperial city designed and built with Mongol and Chinese influences. It was a cosmopolitan center, attracting merchants, scholars, and artisans from across Eurasia. Similarly, cities in the Ilkhanate, like Tabriz, flourished as centers of trade and learning, benefiting from the security of the Pax Mongolica. These urban centers served as critical nodes in the Mongol communication and trade networks. They were places where goods were exchanged, information was disseminated, and diverse cultures interacted. The Mongols, while not abandoning their nomadic roots, effectively leveraged the existing urban infrastructure and, where necessary, built new centers to serve the needs of their vast empire. Mapping and geographical knowledge. The extensive travels and conquests of the Mongols also led to a significant expansion of geographical knowledge. Mongol expeditions and the constant movement of their armies and administrators provided unprecedented information about the vast Eurasian landmass. This knowledge was often compiled into maps and geographical treatises, which, though not always surviving in their original form, influenced later cartography in both East and West. European travelers like Marco Polo, who journeyed through the Mongol Empire, brought back invaluable geographical information that challenged existing European notions of the world and contributed to the burgeoning age of exploration. The Mongols, by connecting distant lands, inadvertently laid the groundwork for a more accurate and comprehensive understanding of global geography. In conclusion, the infrastructure and communication systems of the Mongol Empire were as impressive as their military might. The YAM system, the maintenance of roads and waterways, and the strategic use of urban centers all contributed to the empire's ability to govern, trade, and connect diverse civilizations. These arteries of empire were vital to the Pax Mongolica, facilitating an unprecedented flow of goods, ideas, and people, and leaving a lasting legacy of interconnectedness that reshaped the course of global history. The land transformed, environmental and agricultural impact of the Mongol Empire. The vast expansion and subsequent rule of the Mongol Empire had a profound and multifaceted impact on the environment and agricultural practices across Eurasia. While the initial conquests often brought widespread destruction to settled agricultural lands, the long-term effects were more complex, encompassing both devastation and, in some cases, unexpected ecological shifts and agricultural adaptations. Understanding this environmental legacy requires looking beyond the immediate aftermath of conquest to the broader patterns of land use, resource management, and the unintended consequences of imperial policies. Initial devastation and ecological disruption. The most immediate and visible environmental impact of the Mongol invasions was the widespread destruction of agricultural infrastructure in conquered territories, particularly in Central Asia and Persia. Cities were razed, and more critically for long-term sustenance, intricate irrigation systems, the lifeblood of agriculture in arid regions, were often deliberately destroyed or neglected. The Khanat's underground aqueducts of Persia, for instance, were vital for water supply, and their destruction led to the desertification of once fertile lands and a significant decline in agricultural output. This devastation contributed to widespread famine and demographic collapse in many areas. Furthermore, the sheer scale of Mongol military movements and the grazing of their vast herds of horses and livestock could have localized environmental impacts. Overgrazing in certain areas could lead to soil erosion and degradation, particularly in fragile steppe ecosystems. The burning of cities and agricultural fields during campaigns also contributed to localized air pollution and changes in land cover. The role of climate change, the medieval warm period, and Little Ice Age. It is also important to consider the broader climatic context. The Mongol expansion largely coincided with the end of the medieval warm period and the onset of the Little Ice Age. While the Mongols did not cause these global climatic shifts, their nomadic lifestyle and military strategies were undoubtedly influenced by them. A period of favorable climate with abundant rainfall in the steppe during the early Mongol expansion may have contributed to the growth of their herds and facilitated their movements. Conversely, later periods of drought and colder temperatures could have exacerbated agricultural crises in settled regions and contributed to internal strife within the Khanates. Some theories even suggest a more direct, albeit unintended, environmental impact. The massive depopulation caused by the Mongol conquest, particularly in agricultural regions, led to a significant reforestation of previously cultivated lands. This reforestation, in turn, could have led to a measurable drop in atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, contributing to a slight cooling effect on the global climate. While this theory is still debated, it highlights the immense scale of the Mongol impact on human populations and land use. Agricultural adaptation and resource management. Despite the initial destruction, the Mongols, particularly in the later stages of their rule, demonstrated a pragmatic understanding of the need for agricultural stability. In the Yuan dynasty, for example, efforts were made to repair and extend irrigation systems, particularly the Grand Canal, which was vital for transporting grain. They also encouraged the cultivation of new crops and agricultural techniques, sometimes introducing practices from one part of the empire to another. For instance, new rice strains and drought-resistant crops were introduced to various regions, improving food security. In the Ilkhanate, after the initial devastation, there were also efforts to revive agriculture. Mongol rulers sometimes invested in rebuilding khanates and promoting agricultural production. However, the recovery was often slow and uneven, and some regions never fully recovered their pre-Mongol agricultural productivity. The Mongols also had a sophisticated understanding of resource management within their nomadic context. Their seasonal migrations were carefully planned to ensure sustainable grazing for their herds, preventing overgrazing in any single area. They had a deep knowledge of the steppe ecosystem and its carrying capacity, a knowledge that was essential for their survival and the sustenance of their vast herds. The spread of plants and animals. The Pax Mongolica, by facilitating trade and movement across Eurasia, also led to the unintentional spread of various plants and animals. New crops, such as certain varieties of millet and sorghum, were introduced to different regions. Livestock breeds were also exchanged, contributing to the genetic diversity of domesticated animals across the continent. While often overlooked, this biological exchange had long-term implications for agricultural practices and food systems in various parts of the world. Long-term ecological shifts. The long-term ecological impact of the Mongol Empire is a complex subject. While the initial period was marked by destruction and disruption, the subsequent Pax Mongolica led to a period of relative stability that allowed for some environmental recovery and adaptation. The depopulation in some areas, while tragic, also allowed natural ecosystems to regenerate. The intensified trade and communication also led to the spread of agricultural knowledge and new crops, which could have both positive and negative environmental consequences depending on local conditions. In conclusion, the Mongol Empire's environmental and agricultural legacy is a testament to the profound and often unintended ways in which human actions can reshape the natural world. From the initial devastation of irrigation systems to the potential impact on global carbon cycles, the Mongols left an indelible mark on the landscapes they traversed and governed. Their story reminds us of the intricate connections between human history, climate, and the environment, and how even the most powerful empires are ultimately intertwined with the natural world that sustains them. The enduring echoes, the Mongol Empire's lasting global impact and legacy. The Mongol Empire, a phenomenon of unparalleled scale and intensity, ultimately faded as a unified political entity, yet its reverberations continue to echo through the corridors of history. Its legacy is not a simple narrative of conquest and decline, but a complex tapestry woven with threads of destruction and creation, isolation and interconnectedness, fear and fascination. To truly grasp the enduring impact of the Mongol Empire is to understand how a nomadic people, through sheer will and strategic brilliance, irrevocably altered the course of global development, leaving an indelible mark on the political, social, economic, and cultural landscapes of Eurasia and beyond, reshaping the political map of Eurasia. Perhaps the most immediate and visible legacy of the Mongol Empire was the radical reshaping of the political map of Eurasia. Existing empires and states were shattered, and new political entities emerged from their ashes. In China, the Yuan dynasty, though short-lived, marked a period of foreign rule that profoundly influenced subsequent Chinese imperial structures and cultural identity. In Russia, the Golden Horde's two-century dominance contributed to the centralization of power in Moscow and shaped the unique trajectory of Russian statehood. In the Middle East, the destruction of the Abbasid Caliphate by the Ilkhanate marked a symbolic end to an era, paving the way for new Islamic dynasties and a different geopolitical order. Central Asia, the heartland of the Mongol conquest, experienced profound demographic and cultural shifts, leading to the Turkification of vast regions and the emergence of new tribal confederations. The very concept of empire was redefined by the Mongols, demonstrating the possibility of governing vast, diverse territories through a combination of centralized authority and pragmatic local adaptation. The unprecedented era of global interconnectedness. Beyond political restructuring, the Mongol Empire was the primary catalyst for an unprecedented era of global interconnectedness. The Pax Mongolica, a period of enforced peace and stability across their vast domains, transformed the fragmented and perilous Silk Road into a secure and bustling artery of commerce and communication. This facilitated a massive exchange of goods, ideas, technologies, and even diseases, fundamentally altering the trajectory of human history. From east to west, Chinese innovations like gunpowder, printing, and the compass flowed, revolutionizing warfare, communication, and navigation in Europe. From the Islamic world, advancements in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine were transmitted, enriching both Chinese and European intellectual traditions. This cross-cultural fertilization laid crucial groundwork for the European Renaissance and the Age of Exploration, as Europeans gained access to a wealth of knowledge and technologies that had been developing in isolation for centuries. Cultural synthesis and intellectual exchange. The Mongol Empire, despite its nomadic origins, fostered remarkable periods of cultural synthesis and intellectual exchange. In the Yuan dynasty, Chinese and Mongol artistic traditions blended, giving rise to new forms of painting, ceramics, and drama. In the Ilkhanate, Persian art, architecture, and scholarship flourished, absorbing influences from China and Central Asia, and contributing significantly to the broader Islamic artistic and scientific heritage. The Mongol policy of religious tolerance, born out of pragmatism, created a unique environment for interfaith dialogue and the free movement of religious leaders and scholars. This intellectual openness led to the compilation of monumental historical works, the establishment of advanced observatories, and the translation of texts across multiple languages. The Mongols, while not always the originators of these innovations, acted as powerful facilitators, providing the infrastructure and the tolerant environment necessary for such a vibrant cross-cultural dialogue. This legacy of intellectual exchange continues to underscore the profound benefits of open communication and the cross-pollination of ideas. Environmental and demographic shifts. The Mongol Empire also left a significant, albeit often unintended, environmental and demographic legacy. The initial conquests, particularly in Central Asia and Persia, led to widespread destruction of irrigation systems and agricultural lands, contributing to demographic decline and desertification in some areas. However, the subsequent depopulation in certain regions may have also led to reforestation and a temporary drop in atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, a fascinating, albeit tragic, example of human impact on global climate. The movements of vast populations, both Mongol and conquered peoples, led to significant demographic shifts and the spread of new agricultural practices and livestock breeds. Tragically, the very trade routes that facilitated cultural exchange also served as conduits for the Black Death, which originated in Central Asia and devastated populations across Eurasia, highlighting the unforeseen consequences of increased global interconnectedness. The enduring allure and lessons of the Mongol Empire. Today, the Mongol Empire continues to captivate historians, scholars, and the public alike. Its story is a testament to the extraordinary vision and leadership of Genghis Khan, who transformed disparate nomadic tribes into an unstoppable force that built the largest contiguous land empire in history. It is a story of military genius, administrative innovation, and a pragmatic approach to governance that allowed a nomadic people to rule over settled civilizations. Yet, it is also a story that reminds us of the brutal realities of conquest, the immense human cost of empire building, and the fragility of even the most powerful political structures. The eventual fragmentation of the empire into independent khanates underscores the inherent challenges of governing vast, diverse territories and the powerful forces of local identity and cultural assimilation. The legacy of the Mongol Empire is a powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of human history. It demonstrates how events in one part of the world can have profound and lasting effects across continents. It highlights the complex interplay of military power, economic forces, cultural exchange, and environmental factors in shaping the course of civilizations. As we reflect on the rise and fall of this extraordinary empire, we are left with a deeper understanding of the forces that drive human ambition, the transformative power of global interaction, and the intricate web of connections that continue to bind our past to our present and future. The echoes of the Mongol Empire, both glorious and tragic, continue to resonate, inviting us to contemplate the enduring lessons of its remarkable journey across the Eurasian landscape. The fabric of daily life, education, recreation, and celebrations in the Mongol Empire. Beyond the grand narratives of conquest and governance, the daily lives of the Mongol people, both nomadic and those in settled territories, were rich with customs, traditions, and a distinct cultural rhythm. Understanding their education, forms of recreation, and the significance of their celebrations provides a deeper insight into the social fabric of this vast empire, revealing aspects of their ingenuity, resilience, and communal spirit. Education, learning by doing, and oral tradition. Formal schooling, is understood in settled agricultural societies, was largely absent in the nomadic Mongol world. Education was primarily practical and experiential, deeply integrated into daily life from a very young age. Children learned by observing, imitating, and participating in the activities essential for survival on the steppe. Boys were taught horsemanship, archery, hunting, and herding skills by their fathers and male relatives. They learned to identify tracks, understand animal behavior, and navigate the vast, featureless landscape using natural cues. Girls, under the guidance of their mothers and female relatives, learned the skills necessary for managing the jur, processing animal products, milk, meat, hides, making clothing, and raising children. They were also often skilled horsewomen, capable of assisting with herding and defending their homes if necessary. This hands-on approach ensured that every individual acquired the practical knowledge and skills vital for their nomadic existence. Oral tradition played a crucial role in transmitting knowledge, history, and cultural values. Epic poems, legends, and historical narratives were passed down through generations, often recited by skilled storytellers. These oral traditions served as a collective memory, preserving the history of their ancestors, the exploits of their heroes, and the wisdom of their elders. The Yasa, Genghis Khan's legal code, was also largely transmitted orally, emphasizing its importance in daily conduct. As the empire expanded and interacted with settled civilizations, particularly in China and Persia, formal education systems were encountered. In the Yuan dynasty, while the Mongols maintained their own educational traditions, they also utilized and, to some extent, supported the Chinese imperial examination system, though it was modified and often bypassed for Mongol and non-Han officials. In the Ilkhanate, Islamic madrasas, religious schools, continued to operate, and Mongol patrons sometimes supported scholars in the construction of libraries, demonstrating a pragmatic appreciation for intellectual pursuits, recreation, and games, honing skills, and building bonds. Recreation in the Mongol world was often intertwined with the development of military and survival skills, reflecting their warrior culture. The three manly games, wrestling, horse racing, and archery, were central to Mongol recreation and were practiced with fervor. These were not merely pastimes, but essential training exercises that honed the physical prowess, discipline, and competitive spirit of the warriors. Wrestling. Bok, a test of strength and technique. Bok, or Mongol wrestling, was and remains a highly revered sport. It is a full-body grappling style with no weight classes, emphasizing strength, balance, and technique. Matches are often accompanied by traditional music and elaborate rituals. For the Mongols, wrestling was more than just a sport. It was a test of a man's physical capabilities and a display of his martial readiness. Victories in wrestling brought immense prestige and honor, reinforcing the warrior ethos of their society. It also served as a means of resolving disputes and demonstrating dominance without resorting to lethal combat. Horse racing, Mori Urgilda, speed, endurance, and horsemanship. Horse racing was another cornerstone of Mongol recreation, deeply embedded in their equestrian culture. Unlike Western horse racing, Mongol races are long-distance endurance events, often spanning many kilometers across the open steppe. The jockeys are typically young children, light enough not to burden the horses, but skilled enough to guide them. These races were a testament to the endurance of both horse and rider, showcasing the Mongols' unparalleled horsemanship and the quality of their hardy ponies. They were also a practical way to test the speed and stamina of their horses, identifying the best mounts for military campaigns and breeding. Archery, Shurkava, precision and skill. Archery, the third of the manly games, was perhaps the most critical skill for a Mongol warrior. Competitions involved shooting arrows at distant targets, often from horseback, demonstrating precision, strength, and control. The composite bow, their primary weapon, required immense strength to draw and accuracy to hit moving targets while riding at full gallop. Archery contests were not just about individual skill, but also about maintaining the collective proficiency of the army. They reinforced the importance of the bow as a tool for both hunting and warfare, and success in these competitions was a source of great pride. Other forms of recreation. Beyond the three manly games, Mongols engaged in various other forms of recreation. Hunting, as previously mentioned, was both a means of sustenance and a highly organized sport that served as military training. Falconry, the art of hunting with trained birds of prey, was also popular among the elite, showcasing their mastery over nature and their refined hunting skills. Storytelling, music, and singing were important communal activities, especially during long evenings in the GR or around campfires. Traditional instruments like the morin-kur, horsehead fiddle, were used to accompany epic tales and folk songs, preserving their oral traditions and cultural heritage. Games of strategy such as chess were also played, honing their tactical thinking and intellectual prowess. Celebrations and festivals, reinforcing community bonds. Festivals and celebrations were vital for reinforcing community bonds, celebrating achievements, and marking important life events. The most significant of these was the Nadam Festival, traditionally held in summer, which incorporated the three manly games. Nadam was a grand gathering bringing together tribes and clans from across the steppe for days of competition, feasting, and communal celebration. It was a time for renewing alliances, displaying wealth, and showcasing the strength and vitality of the Mongol nation. Weddings, births, and successful hunts were also occasions for celebration involving feasting, drinking, especially arag, singing, and dancing. These gatherings provided opportunities for social interaction, courtship, and the strengthening of familial and tribal ties. They were moments of respite from the harsh realities of nomadic life, allowing the Mongols to reaffirm their cultural identity and communal solidarity. Religious ceremonies guided by shamans also played a significant role in their communal life, particularly those related to the worship of Tengri and the spirits of nature. These ceremonies often involved offerings, prayers, and communal gatherings, reinforcing their spiritual connection to the land and their ancestors. In essence, the recreation and celebrations of the Mongol Empire were not merely diversions, but integral components of their cultural identity and their system of survival. They serve to hone essential skills, reinforce social bonds, transmit cultural values, and provide moments of joy and communal solidarity in a challenging world. These aspects of daily life offer a more complete picture of the Mongol people, revealing their ingenuity, their resilience, and their deep connection to their unique way of life on the vast Eurasian steppe. The Great Fragmentation, the decline and dissolution of the unified Mongol Empire. The vast and seemingly invincible Mongol Empire, which had stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, eventually succumbed to the forces of internal division, cultural assimilation, and the sheer logistical challenges of governing such an immense territory. While the Pax Mongolica fostered an era of unprecedented interconnectedness, the very success of the empire contained the seeds of its eventual fragmentation. The decline was not a sudden collapse, but a gradual process leading to the emergence of independent khanates that, while retaining a Mongol identity, increasingly pursued their own destinies. The seeds of division, succession, and appanages. Genghis Khan, in his wisdom, had attempted to prevent internal strife by establishing a clear line of succession and dividing his empire into appanages, ulas, among his sons and grandsons. However, this very system, designed to ensure the continuity of his lineage, inadvertently laid the groundwork for future divisions. Each Ulus, while initially acknowledging the Great Khan's supreme authority, gradually developed its own distinct interests, administrative structures, and cultural identities. The first major crack appeared with the Toluid Civil War, 1264 between Kublai Khan and his brother Arik Bokeh for the title of Great Khan. This conflict, fought over the very heart of the empire, effectively formalized the division. While Kublai eventually emerged victorious, his authority was largely confined to the Yuan dynasty in China, and the other Khanates increasingly asserted their independence. The concept of a unified Mongol empire under a single Great Khan began to wane, replaced by a system of independent, albeit related, Mongol states. Cultural assimilation. The Mongols become their subjects. One of the most significant factors in the dissolution of the unified empire was the cultural assimilation of the Mongol ruling elites into the traditions of their conquered territories. The Mongols, a nomadic people, found themselves ruling over ancient, sophisticated agricultural civilizations with deeply entrenched cultural and religious practices. Over generations, the Mongol rulers, particularly in the Ilkhanate and the Yuan dynasty, began to adopt the customs, languages, and religions of their subjects. In Persia, the Ilkhans gradually converted to Islam, the dominant religion of the region. This conversion, while legitimizing their rule in the eyes of their Muslim subjects, also distanced them from their shamanistic roots and the other Mongol khanates. They became patrons of Persian art, architecture, and scholarship, effectively becoming Persianized Mongols. Similarly, in China, the Yuan emperors, while maintaining a distinct Mongol identity, embraced many aspects of Chinese imperial administration, art, and philosophy. This process of assimilation, while contributing to the stability of individual khanates, eroded the pan-Mongol identity that had once bound the empire together. Economic strain and administrative challenges. The sheer size of the Mongol Empire presented immense administrative and economic challenges. Maintaining control over such vast distances, collecting taxes, and suppressing rebellions required enormous resources. The sophisticated yam system helped, but it could not fully overcome the logistical difficulties. Economic policies, while initially promoting trade, sometimes led to inflation and economic hardship, particularly in the Yuan dynasty, where the excessive issuance of paper money contributed to economic instability. Furthermore, the nomadic lifestyle of the Mongols, while advantageous for conquest, was not always conducive to the long-term administration of settled agricultural societies. They often relied on local bureaucrats and administrators whose loyalty could be tenuous. The burden of taxation and the occasional harshness of Mongol rule also led to resentment and sporadic rebellions, further straining the empire's resources. External pressures and internal rebellions, as the Khanates became more independent, and their internal cohesion weakened, they faced increasing external pressures and internal rebellions. In China, the Yuan dynasty faced growing resentment from the native Han Chinese population who viewed the Mongols as foreign occupiers. A series of natural disasters, coupled with economic mismanagement and corruption, fueled widespread peasant rebellions, most notably the Red Turban Rebellion, which ultimately led to the overthrow of the Yuan dynasty by the Ming dynasty in 1368. In the West, the Golden Horde faced challenges from the rising power of the Grand Duchy of Moscow, which gradually asserted its independence, internal conflicts among the Mongol princes, and the fragmentation into smaller competing khanates further weakened the Golden Horde, leading to its eventual decline. The Ilkhanate in Persia also succumbed to internal strife and external pressures, disintegrating into various successor states in the mid-14th century. The end of an era, the dawn of new powers. The dissolution of the unified Mongol Empire marked the end of an extraordinary era of global unity and interconnectedness. However, it also paved the way for the rise of new regional powers and the reassertion of local identities. The Ming dynasty in China, the Muscovite state in Russia, and various Turkic and Persian dynasties in Central Asia and the Middle East all emerged from the ashes of the Mongol Empire, often building upon the administrative and military foundations laid by their former overlords. Despite its fragmentation, the legacy of the Mongol Empire endured. The trade routes established during the Pax Mongolica continued to facilitate commerce and cultural exchange, albeit with less security. The administrative innovations, military tactics, and cultural syntheses fostered under Mongol rule continued to influence subsequent empires and states. The very memory of the Mongol conquest, both terrifying and awe-inspiring, shaped the geopolitical landscape and the collective consciousness of Eurasia for centuries. In conclusion, the decline and dissolution of the unified Mongol Empire was a complex process driven by a combination of internal divisions, cultural assimilation, administrative challenges, and external pressures. While its unified rule was relatively short-lived, its impact was profound and enduring, leaving an indelible mark on the political, social, economic, and cultural development of the vast regions it once commanded. The story of its fragmentation is as much a part of its legacy as its initial rise, reminding us that even the most formidable empires are ultimately subject to the forces of change and adaptation. Three manly games, wrestling, horse racing, and archery, were central to Mongol recreation and were practiced with fervor. These were not merely pastimes, but essential training exercises that honed the physical prowess, discipline, and competitive spirit of the warriors. Wrestling. Bok, a test of strength and technique. Bok, or Mongol wrestling, was and remains a highly revered sport. It is a full-body grappling style with no weight classes, emphasizing strength, balance, and technique. Matches are often accompanied by traditional music and elaborate rituals. For the Mongols, wrestling was more than just a sport. It was a test of a man's physical capabilities and a display of his martial readiness. Victories in wrestling brought immense prestige and honor, reinforcing the warrior ethos of their society. It also served as a means of resolving disputes and demonstrating dominance without resorting to lethal combat. Horse racing, Mori Urgalda, speed, endurance, and horsemanship. Horse racing was another cornerstone of Mongol recreation, deeply embedded in their equestrian culture. Unlike Western horse racing, Mongol races are long-distance endurance events, often spanning many kilometers across the open steppe. The jockeys are typically young children, light enough not to burden the horses, but skilled enough to guide them. These races were a testament to the endurance of both horse and rider, showcasing the Mongols' unparalleled horsemanship and the quality of their hardy ponies. They were also a practical way to test the speed and stamina of their horses, identifying the best mounts for military campaigns and breeding. Archery, Shurkava, precision and skill. Archery, the third of the manly games, was perhaps the most critical skill for a Mongol warrior. Competitions involved shooting arrows at distant targets, often from horseback, demonstrating precision, strength, and control. The composite bow, their primary weapon, required immense strength to draw and accuracy to hit moving targets while riding at full gallop. Archery contests were not just about individual skill, but also about maintaining the collective proficiency of the army. They reinforced the importance of the bow as a tool for both hunting and warfare, and success in these competitions was a source of great pride. Other forms of recreation. Beyond the three manly games, Mongols engaged in various other forms of recreation. Hunting, as previously mentioned, was both a means of sustenance and a highly organized sport that served as military training. Falconry, the art of hunting with trained birds of prey, was also popular among the elite, showcasing their mastery over nature and their refined hunting skills. Storytelling, music, and singing were important communal activities, especially during long evenings in the GR or around campfires. Traditional instruments like the morin-kur, horsehead fiddle, were used to accompany epic tales and folk songs, preserving their oral traditions and cultural heritage. Games of strategy, such as chess, were also played, honing their tactical thinking and intellectual prowess. Celebrations and festivals, reinforcing community bonds. Festivals and celebrations were vital for reinforcing community bonds, celebrating achievements, and marking important life events. The most significant of these was the Nadam Festival, traditionally held in summer, which incorporated the three manly games. Nadam was a grand gathering bringing together tribes and clans from across the steppe for days of competition, feasting, and communal celebration. It was a time for renewing alliances, displaying wealth, and showcasing the strength and vitality of the Mongol nation. Weddings, births, and successful hunts were also occasions for celebration involving feasting, drinking, especially arag, singing, and dancing. These gatherings provided opportunities for social interaction, courtship, and the strengthening of familial and tribal ties. They were moments of respite from the harsh realities of nomadic life, allowing the Mongols to reaffirm their cultural identity and communal solidarity. Religious ceremonies, guided by shamans, also played a significant role in their communal life, particularly those related to the worship of Tengri and the spirits of nature. These ceremonies often involved offerings, prayers, and communal gatherings, reinforcing their spiritual connection to the land and their ancestors. In essence, the recreation and celebrations of the Mongol Empire were not merely diversions, but integral components of their cultural identity and their system of survival. They served to hone essential skills, reinforce social bonds, transmit cultural values, and provide moments of joy and communal solidarity in a challenging world. These aspects of daily life offer a more complete picture of the Mongol people, revealing their ingenuity, their resilience, and their deep connection to their unique way of life on the vast Eurasian steppe. The role of women in Mongol society: strength, influence, and autonomy. In many historical narratives, the role of women is often relegated to the background, but in the Mongol Empire, women held a remarkably prominent and influential position, particularly when compared to their counterparts in many contemporary settled societies. Their strength, autonomy, and direct involvement in both daily life and political affairs were integral to the success and endurance of the Mongol nomadic culture and its vast empire. Partners in survival, economic and domestic roles. Life on the steppe was demanding, and survival depended on the active participation of every member of the family. Mongol women were not confined to domestic roles. They were essential partners in the economic life of the nomadic household. They were responsible for managing the yurt, raising children, and preparing food, but their duties extended far beyond these traditional tasks. They were skilled in processing animal products, including milking mares, making arag, fermented mare's milk, and preparing meat and hides. They were also adept at crafting felt, a crucial material for jurs and clothing, and weaving textiles. Furthermore, Mongol women were often skilled horsewomen, capable of riding long distances and assisting with herding. In times of war, they were responsible for dismantling and reassembling jurs, moving camps, and ensuring the continuity of the nomadic lifestyle while the men were away on campaigns. This practical necessity fostered a strong sense of self-reliance and competence, giving women significant authority within the domestic sphere and contributing directly to the family's economic well-being. Political influence and leadership beyond the tent. Perhaps the most striking aspect of women's roles in Mongol society was their political influence. While the great Khan was always male, women from the Golden Family, particularly the wives and mothers of Khans, often wielded considerable power and authority. They served as regents for their young sons, advised their husbands, and sometimes even directly participated in political decision making. Their opinions were valued, and their counsel sought on matters of state. Notable examples include Ho-Ellen, Genghis Khan's mother, who played a crucial role in his early life and rise to power, offering shrewd advice and demonstrating remarkable resilience. Even more influential was Sorgatani Beki, the wife of Tolui, Genghis Khan's youngest son, and mother of 4 future Khans, including Monkey and Kublai. Sorgatani Beki was a brilliant administrator and strategist who skillfully managed her appanage, educated her sons, and navigated the complex political landscape of the early Mongol Empire. Her political acumen and foresight were instrumental in ensuring the succession of her sons to the highest positions of power, profoundly shaping the future trajectory of the empire. These powerful women often acted as intermediaries between different factions, maintained diplomatic relations, and even commanded armies in the absence of their male relatives. Their influence was not merely informal, they held legitimate authority within the Mongol system, demonstrating a degree of female empowerment that was rare in many other contemporary societies. Legal rights and social standing are relative autonomy. Under the Asa, Genghis Khan's legal code, Mongol women enjoyed a relatively high degree of legal rights and social standing. They had the right to own property, inherit wealth, and initiate divorce. While polygamy was practiced, the first wife held a superior position and her children were considered legitimate heirs. Daughters were often married off to forge alliances, but their consent, or at least their family's consent, was generally sought. Unlike women in many settled agricultural societies, Mongol women were not secluded or veiled. They moved freely, participated in public life, and interacted openly with men. This relative autonomy was a direct reflection of their vital economic contributions and their active role in the nomadic lifestyle. Their ability to ride, hunt, and manage the household made them indispensable partners, and their social standing reflected this essential contribution. Challenges and limitations. Despite their significant roles and relative autonomy, Mongol women still face challenges and limitations inherent in a patriarchal society. Their primary role was still seen as childbearing and maintaining the family line. Their political influence, while substantial, was often exercised through their male relatives, and direct rule by women was exceptional. They were also subject to the harsh realities of nomadic life, including the dangers of childbirth, disease, and the constant movement across the steppe. Furthermore, as the Mongol Empire expanded and its rulers assimilated into the more patriarchal societies of China and Persia, the status of women in the ruling elite sometimes shifted. While the nomadic traditions continued to influence their roles, the strictures of settled societies could, in some instances, lead to a reduction in their public visibility and direct influence. Enduring legacy. The strong and influential role of women in Mongol society stands as a unique and compelling aspect of their history. It challenges conventional notions of gender roles in pre-modern empires and highlights the adaptability and pragmatism of Mongol culture. The resilience, resourcefulness, and political acumen of Mongol women were not just footnotes in the grand narrative of conquest. They were fundamental to the survival, expansion, and enduring legacy of the Mongol Empire. Their story reminds us that the strength of a society often lies in the full utilization of the talents and capabilities of all its members, regardless of gender. The Mongol impact on Europe and the Middle East, fear, fascination, and transformation. The Mongol invasions of Europe and the Middle East in the 13th century sent shockwaves across these regions, leaving a legacy of fear, destruction, but also unexpected transformation. While the initial encounters were marked by brutal conquest and widespread devastation, the subsequent Mongol rule and interactions had profound and lasting effects on the political, social, and cultural landscapes of these civilizations. The Golden Horde and Eastern Europe, a shadow of dominance, The Golden Horde, one of the four major khanates that emerged from the fragmentation of the Mongol Empire, established its dominance over much of Eastern Europe, including the Rus' principalities, modern-day Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. The Mongol invasions of Rus in the 1230s and 1240s were devastating, leading to the destruction of numerous cities, the slaughter of populations, and the imposition of a heavy tribute system. For over 2 centuries, the Rus principalities remained vassals of the Golden Horde, a period often referred to as the Tatar yoke. This period of Mongol rule had a profound impact on the development of Russia. While it isolated Russia from the burgeoning Renaissance in Western Europe, it also contributed to the centralization of power in Moscow, which eventually emerged as the dominant Rus' principality. The Mongols introduced new administrative techniques, including a more efficient tax collection system and a sophisticated postal network. They also influenced Russian military organization and tactics, particularly in cavalry warfare. The long period of Mongol suzerainty shaped Russian political culture, fostering a tradition of autocratic rule and a strong central state. Beyond Russia, the Golden Horde launched devastating raids into Poland, Hungary, and other parts of Central Europe. While these invasions did not result in permanent Mongol occupation, they caused immense destruction and instilled a deep fear of the Tatars that persisted for centuries. The memory of these invasions played a significant role in shaping European perceptions of the East and contributed to the development of defensive strategies against future nomadic incursions. The Ilkhanate in the Middle East, a cultural synthesis. In the Middle East, the Mongol impact was equally transformative, though perhaps more nuanced. The Ilkhanate, founded by Hulagu Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, established its rule over Persia, Mesopotamia, and parts of Anatolia. The initial conquests were marked by extreme brutality, most notably the sack of Baghdad in 1258, which led to the destruction of the Abbasid Caliphate, a symbolic blow to the Islamic world. However, unlike the Golden Horde, the Ilkhans eventually converted to Islam, beginning with Ghazan Khan in the late 13th century. This conversion marked a significant turning point as the Mongol rulers began to integrate more fully into Persian society and culture. They became patrons of Islamic art, architecture, and science, leading to a remarkable cultural synthesis. Persian became the administrative language of the Ilkhanate, and Persian scholars and artists flourished under Mongol patronage. The Ilkhanate period witnessed significant advancements in astronomy, mathematics, and medicine. Observatories were built, and new astronomical tables were compiled. Historians like Rashid al-Din produced monumental works, such as the Jami al-Tawarik, Compendium of Chronicles, which provided a comprehensive history of the world, including detailed accounts of the Mongols. This intellectual flourishing, often referred to as the Ilkhanid Renaissance, demonstrated the Mongols' ability to absorb and foster the cultural traditions of the peoples they conquered. Economically, the Ilkhanate also saw a revitalization of trade as it became a crucial link in the Silk Road network. The Mongols actively promoted commerce, and the stability they brought despite the initial destruction allowed for the recovery and growth of urban centers. However, the Ilkhanate also faced internal strife and economic challenges, eventually fragmenting into smaller dynasties in the mid-14th century. The Mamluks and the halt of Mongol expansion. One of the most significant events in the Mongol expansion into the Middle East was their encounter with the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. In 1260, the Mamluks, a military slave dynasty, decisively defeated the Mongol army at the Battle of Ain Jalut in Palestine. This battle was a pivotal moment, marking the first major defeat of the Mongol army in open battle and effectively halting their westward expansion into the Levant and North Africa. The Mamluks became the unlikely saviors of the Islamic heartland, preventing the Mongols from reaching Egypt and potentially altering the course of Islamic history. Overall impact and legacy. The Mongol impact on Europe and the Middle East was complex and multifaceted. In Eastern Europe, particularly Russia, Their rule led to a period of isolation, but also contributed to the centralization of power and the development of a distinct political culture. In the Middle East, while the initial conquests were devastating, the Ilkhanate eventually fostered a period of cultural synthesis and intellectual flourishing, particularly after their conversion to Islam. The Mongol invasions also forced European powers to confront a formidable external threat, leading to increased diplomatic efforts and a greater awareness of the vastness of the world beyond their borders. The accounts of travelers like Marco Polo, who journeyed through the Mongol Empire, sparked European curiosity about the East and contributed to the eventual age of exploration. In essence, the Mongols, through their conquests and subsequent rule, acted as a powerful catalyst for change in both Europe and the Middle East. They disrupted existing political orders, introduced new administrative and military practices, and facilitated an unprecedented exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies. Their legacy in these regions is a testament to their transformative power, a blend of destruction and creation that reshaped the course of history in profound and enduring ways.